All right. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Thursday night and a special call-in show. I guess they're all special. They're all special. Special call-in show. I'm being obvious. It's special because you're here. And absolutely. Big Ten coaches rankings. That spotlights our show tonight. Big Ten coaches rankings. I've done my homework as I always do. We've released our Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC coaches rankings. Check them out. Please check them out. We decided just, hey, why don't we just go live and unveil the Big Ten coaches rankings? You know what? I'm going to admit one of the reasons why we're doing this live after I produced the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC coaches as videos and doing a live stream for this one. I'm lazy. So if we do this live, I don't put in the graphics and I don't put in, although I build graphics, but they're less extensive than the graphics that have to be built for the videos. And then I added pictures for the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12. So I thought, hey, let's get the immediate response from everyone on the Big Ten coaches. And then, of course, we'll release the SEC. Maybe I'll do a live show for that as well. We shall see. And then once we get done with all the coaches and deliver our top 10 coaches in college football, so we're going to put them all together, release the top 10 coaches as well. Then we start on the position rankings. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, corners, safeties, special teams. We're going to go through the gamut. Offense and defense, ranking the players in college football. Also, schedule previews are coming up soon. I will be delivering my thoughts on every schedule in the country. We're going to go through that as well. And also keep in mind that Saturdays during April are special as well. A lot of special things tonight. April Saturdays mean is spring football. And we went live for a Michigan Watch Party this past Saturday. Now coming up this Saturday, I've got a schedule to release in which we will keep track of as much spring football as we possibly can from about noon through the rest of the day here at the Voice of College Football. The number of teams playing on Saturday is pretty astounding. Coming up on Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. in the morning, Boston College, 11 a.m. Eastern. Purdue's at noon. Clemson, Cincinnati start at 1. So does Kentucky and NC State. You got Pitt at 1. Arizona, Auburn at 2 Eastern, along with Texas A&M and Nebraska, Kansas. Also, North Carolina, they're on the ACC network at 3. Stanford, Florida State at 5. We are definitely going live during the Florida State game, and with live post of Florida State, live post to Nebraska, and I'm going to do the Clemson live stream as well during the Clemson spring game. Appreciate everybody being here. Let's check out some of these comments before I unveil my coaches' rankings in the Big Ten. Exploring with Ben. Driving like a fool today. Uncle Rico's got Harbaugh at number 15. Yeah, Jim Knowles comes in, I think, at 14. And then Harbaugh slots in at 15, something like that. Exploring with Ben's listening. We got you. You're here, even though we're not going to hear from you, see you. Let's all remember, Exploring with Ben is here, not just in spirit. He's listening. John, let's see. Let's see. I've been on for 6 minutes. I was only 3 minutes late. I guess it's not a Mark Rogers show because I didn't start 6 to 17 minutes late. I only started 3 minutes late. Man, does that mean it's going to be a down show? Can't let that happen. Lemansky. Tom Allen fitting among Mike Loxley, Brett Bielema, Scott Frost will be interesting. Loxley or Frost at the bottom. We shall see. Joey Foster, good to see you, man. The guy that has made the West Virginia channel possible. Our guy, Joey Foster. And of course, every Friday night, we've got a West Virginia show here at the Voice of College Football. Garrett, good to see you. Falconer Rex. It was a fun conclusion to the Miami show that we just wrapped up a few minutes ago over on the Miami channel. Falconer Rex in full support, but also had to withstand my onslaught concerning the Ohio State-Miami National Championship game of 2002. Ferris is here. And if I miss you, any of you, of course, I'm not intending to, but can't say hi to everyone. Yes, Christopher, Mike Loxley did coach at New Mexico State and went like 3 and a million there. Very unsuccessful stay for Mike Loxley at New Mexico. Falconer X, appreciate that. Falconer X, even after what I said about the Miami Ohio State Fiesta Bowl game, Falconer X is still here supporting. Chris is special. Yes, Lemansky, Mr. Mark. Don't see the Big Ten helmets. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that would make sense. We got to put the Big Ten helmets back for the Big Ten show. Although, of course, you guys can call in and talk about whatever you want. So it doesn't have to be a Big Ten show. But Nebraska, Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. Are we all happy? Those are my 4 Big Ten helmets. 10 to go. Joey, support the live shows by searching Mark Rogers TV on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Yeah, that's one way to do it, definitely. Or you can do that super sticker, Falconer X way. But we appreciate it, Joey, reminding everyone, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. You just search Mark Rogers TV. Sad Buckeye. This does not surprise me. He wants Ryan Day last. He sucks. George, 22 watching, only 7 likes. Yes, all 14 Big Ten coaches. Why would anyone want to coach a Big Ten team? I think it pays rather well, Falconer X. I believe. Appreciate the like. Ballard's in the house as well. Kirk Ferentz. Spinner fault. I think this is a spinner bait. This, I believe, is the first time I've ever seen your handle. So welcome to the Voice of College Football. You're an Iowa fan. That's pretty obvious. Would love to know how long you've been watching. Yes, opening day of Major League Baseball, which before I get into these coaches' rankings, I would say that normally it would have been throughout my entire life from the time I was 9 years old until just a couple of years ago, it would have been, I would have had to drag myself on here during opening day to do live streams during Major League Baseball. I would have been, I remember it must have been like 2005 or 6 was the first year I got the extra innings package where you get all the baseball games you'd ever want. You get everybody. And I sat there on opening day, the first time I got the extra innings package after I'd watched like 9 hours of baseball. And I just thought, I just paid like $180 for this. And it was well worth it the first day. Day one, I was already like, it's paid for itself. But I have fallen out of love with baseball inexplicably. I still love the game. I still think it's beautiful. But I have lost my interest in what's going on in Major League Baseball now. For a few different reasons, I guess. Some of it doesn't really have a reason. It's just kind of odd that and my son the same way. So it was kind of strange to see on social media sometime today that it was opening day, and I did not even know that. Normally, I know 111 days before. I usually have a countdown in my head to opening day. Exploring with Ben. I did get notified by the local Staples that the new helmet's in. So I will get down there and pick it up. The Ohio State spring game, I believe, is it is not this Saturday. The Ohio State spring game is coming up on the 16th, next Saturday. Ballard, Ohio State might be a better program overall, but Harbaugh is better than Ryan Day. That's facts. No, sir, it's not a fact. You are erroneous in saying anything like that is a fact. That is not a fact. Please go to the dictionary and look up the definition of fact. All right. I'll get back to the comments in just a second and fire up the phone lines as well. But let's first get to the rankings. Hey, Cheryl. Falcon Rex, the Big Ten has the worst helmets of any conference. Iowa's the only good team in the Big Ten. All right, let's get to the rankings. I will need to find them. Where did I leave those? They are certainly not in my Miami folder. They must be. Uh-oh, where did I make those? I thought I put them. Well, I thought I know where I placed those. There we go. All right, let's all play along here. We will start at 14 and work our way up. We all ready for number 14 in the Big Ten? At the bottom. Let me explain before we start. Most of these guys know what they're doing. Most of these guys are really good at what they do, regardless of the conference, especially in the Power 5. So you can, let's say, hire a sales staff of 10, and they could all just knock the ball out of the park, run around like their hair's on fire and be amazing salespeople. Your entire staff could be amazing. But if somebody said, rank your salespeople, you would have to rank them. You would have to have somebody at number 10, and your number 10 person you could feel great about them. They could be doing an amazing job, and you could still say, well, I got to rank them 1 through 10. When I was at ESPN, I remember there being rankings that we would go through on the personnel level. Same thing. You could feel really good about number 18 out of 20. Maybe you had 2 stiffs, but the first 18, really good to varying degrees. Somebody's number 18, that sounds awful out of 20. There you go. Okay. So we'll start at number 14 with Nebraska's Scott Frost, who has done less with more than Scott Frost in the Big Ten over his tenure, 15-29. And I know that they were the best 3-9 team in America, maybe the best 3-9 team in history. Maybe they were. They still went 3-9. And he took over, yes, a program that was not in the best of condition after Mike Riley. But Mike Riley won more than Scott Frost by a ton. Mike Riley went 9-4 his middle season. And of course, Scott Frost inherited Mike Riley's recruiting classes, but those recruiting classes were generally decent in the top 25 to 30 in the nation. Scott Frost has done nothing but find ways to lose games. And if that had occurred over one season, so if you go back in my Big Ten coaches rankings, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, Scott Frost hasn't succeeded since game number 1 at Nebraska, but I gave him a much higher ranking earlier for 2 different reasons. Number one, he was closer to his UCF success. So that factors in more. The closer the results, the more I'm going to factor it in. I'm going to factor or consider what these coaches were doing and accomplishing or failing to do 2 and 3 years ago, more so than 10 years ago or 15 years ago. That's pretty much dead at this point. But when Scott Frost came on the scene at Nebraska, and even though he wasn't winning games, we could see positive impact of him being there and the team, despite losing, playing better than the Mike Riley teams in many instances. So I gave him a buffer there. Well, that buffer's destroyed. It's gone. He's been there for 5 years. So 15-29, losing more one-score games than any coach in college football. And it started not well in terms of wins and losses, but in terms of performance on the field. Scott Frost started 0-6 at Nebraska. Then they won 4 of their final 6 in that 2018 season. And their 2 losses, last play of the game to a top 15 Iowa team, last play of the game, and also barely losing in Columbus against Ohio State, a team that won the Big Ten title, the Rose Bowl, finished 13-1. So it looked like, wow, okay, after 0-6, 4-2, beat a couple decent teams, and barely lost to 2 exceptional teams. Man, this is rolling now. Well, that was in 2018. It's never gotten rolling since. Now, new offensive coordinator. We will see if Scott Frost is able to turn the corner. The special teams has been deplorable. He's finally addressing that as well. Scott Frost is at number 14. And that's after going 19-7 at UCF. At number 13, we've got Mike Loxley of Maryland. He had an atrocious run at New Mexico. Does that factor in a whole lot here? A little bit. But it's more about the Maryland stint. Maryland, record-wise, wasn't horrible last year at 7-6. But they did go 3-6 in the Big Ten, and they are nowhere closer to competing with Ohio State and those level teams than they were when he showed up. So he started to win some games against the lower level of the Big Ten, but they got drubbed by 49 points against Ohio State, 37 against Iowa. Michigan beat them by 4 touchdowns. You know, they're not competitive against good teams. They have yet to compete against any good teams anywhere. So Mike Loxley still, I don't know how he got the Maryland job because he had done nothing anywhere to earn it as a head coach. So I question that hire first and foremost. He's recruiting well, but DJ Durkin did as well and didn't get the job done either. So at number 13, we got Mike Loxley. At number 12, I love this guy, and he's coming off a down season. And again, do not misinterpret the number 12 ranking. This is maybe the best coaching conference in college football. Tom Allen, Indiana. 2019 and 2020 were exceptional. Took over a bad program from Kevin Wilson, raised the standards, raised the intensity. This last recruiting class he brought in, despite 2-10 and 0-9 in the Big Ten, best recruiting class in the history of Indiana football. So he's still able to, number one, parlay that 2019 and 20 success into recruiting yield. But also on top of that, he's just a fireball who relates to people. They love him. He engages with young men, and they respond. So Tom Allen had a horrible 2021 season, coming off 8-5 for the bowl loss to Tennessee, and then that 6-2 season, which they lost the bowl game to Ole Miss and played Ohio State within a touchdown and almost won the Big Ten East in 2020. So Tom Allen, 26-32, 15-28 in the Big Ten. Again, he has raised the level there at Indiana, but a huge drop off, just off the rails this past season. All right, let's check your comments before we keep moving along here. Dave says any Indiana coach who goes 500 is a Hall of Famer. So Tom Allen is 26-32, so he's got a ways to go. He's got to go on a 6-game winning streak to be a Hall of Famer. Garrett says nothing against Maryland, but they are not a Big Ten school at all. They are an East Coast school, not a Midwest school, and Ohio State always plays them and beats them. We already have Indiana for that. Well, Ohio State's got almost everybody in the conference there to beat on a regular basis. Really everybody in the conference. Get out the way, John Boy, or whatever it is. Get out the John Boy. There it is. Where are all the good teams you speak of in the Big Ten? Where are they? They're located in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio and Iowa. That's where they are. So we can do our best to find a map. And that looks to be about it on our first 3 coaches. Not a whole lot there. Tim says Big Ten has the best fans in the country, hands down. Okay. A100 says Nebraska should have kept Frank Solich. Good to see you, Erica. I should have probably simulcasted this live stream to the Iowa, Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan channels. All right, let's get back to the rankings here. We left off at Tom Allen at number 12. Checking in at 11. I was really impressed with the season turned in by Purdue. Jeff Brom comes in from Louisville, offensive-minded guy. That's his reputation, and actually Purdue was better on defense for most of his tenure here. They've been up and down, but really rebounded from 2 down seasons in 2022. 9-4, should have been ranked in the top 25. Why Purdue was not in the final rankings is another slam against the AP. Pathetic that Purdue 9-4. Purdue went 9-4. Okay, they lost to Ohio State. They beat Michigan State. They beat Tennessee. They barely lost to Minnesota by 1 score. They beat Iowa. They lost to Wisconsin. They lost to Notre Dame on the road in a close game. Why was Purdue not ranked at 9-4? Anyway, Jeff Brom, maybe he's turned things around. He's got to find a running game to complement the passing. Aiden O'Connell had a monster year for Purdue. Of course, he loses most of his weapons, starting with David Bell. But Jeff Brom, I feel good about the 11th ranking for Jeff Brom. Good, solid coach. Hasn't set the world on fire, but has pretty much stabilized the program. And it was really crucial for him to rebound after 2 bad seasons with a 9-4 campaign. At number 10, this guy is, maybe I've got him underrated in a certain sense. He's coached in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He made Rutgers football respectable for the first time in forever, the first time around. Then he just took over a Rutgers program again on the second stint that was the laughingstock of the Big Ten, if not the nation, losing basically every game by 50 points, losing 21 consecutive Big Ten games. And now, okay, he went 5-8 this last year. And what was that? That must have been 2-7 in the Big, no, 3-6, I believe, in the Big Ten, coming off at 2-5. And that's after losing 21 consecutive games when he showed up in the Big Ten. And Greg Schiano, he can coach. He can coach and build programs. And he's doing it for a second time at Rutgers, and he's instantly made them at least respectable. At least, I don't want to call them competitive, but they at least show up and play and can compete now with Indiana and Illinois and Northwestern. They were just playing high school football for a few years. All right, Greg Schiano with 10. At number 9, we've got Kirk Ferentz. Man, the dean of Big Ten coaches, going all the way back to 1999. The timeline for Kirk Ferentz has been that he took over for a legendary Hayden Fry. The program was down. Took him a couple of years to lift it up. And after 3 or 4 seasons at Iowa, this guy looked like he was arguably the best coach in college football. Lifted a 1-10 program to 3 consecutive. Think of this, Iowa fans. Let this sink in and envision this being your program now. I'm talking 02, 03, 04. Iowa finished in the top 25, those 3 seasons, number 8. Imagine Iowa now finishing in the top 10 3 consecutive years. They're good, but they're not anywhere close to that good. They went to the Orange Bowl. They beat Nick Saban. They handed Nick Saban his last loss at LSU. Iowa was Ferentz. He took that program off and then leveled off. And ever since, it's been 8-4. They are the quintessential 8-4 program. And that's been going on for a long time. And that's good. That's stable. That's going to get you to the Outback Bowl. His 2 Big Ten championships, I don't want to call them tainted. They're shared. So no longer do we have shared conference championships in major college football because everybody plays a conference championship game. But back in the day, Ferentz won 2 Big Ten titles shared in 02 with Ohio State and 04 with Michigan. So he has not won an outright Big Ten championship. 1999 through 22, that's about 23, 24 seasons. He's finished in the top 25 10 times. He's had a good run. It's stable. It's good. It's not great. Could be better. At number 8, I got Bret Bielema. He took over a really good program at Wisconsin and raised it. 3 consecutive Big Ten championships and Rose Bowl appearances. Then he took over for Arkansas, and that ultimately derailed his career. Had to spend some time in the NFL. And actually, if you really dissect his stay at Arkansas, better than most people give him credit for. If you really put it into context of what he was left by John L. Smith, Bielema did a decent job at Arkansas, but he lost it there at the end. They had a 4-8 year. He got ousted. One bad season, and he got ousted at Arkansas. 1 bad year. Comes to Illinois, and now we will just have to wait and see. Illinois had a curious season this past year. They were not a good football team, but they beat a really good Minnesota team. They beat a Penn State team that's ultra talented. I'm not going to sell Penn State as a good team coming off 7-6, but super talented. So they had 2 really good wins, Minnesota, Penn State. Otherwise, couldn't get to a bowl game, but they fared much better than I anticipated. Bret Bielema got a lot of respect for him. He says that he's learned much from his NFL stint. We shall see. All right, let's dive back into the chat. Appreciate the super chats coming in. Let me get to them. We've got Pang Dang. Suki 5 Domar. Appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you so much for that. That was fun saying that. And then we've got, of course, Falcon Rex is here somewhere. Andy T just disliked the video. Thank you for that, Andy. Appreciate that. Alan, thank you for being here as well. Lemansky says, Bret Bielema too high. No manners. Yeah, I forgot to mark him down for manners. Needs more class. Know his old girlfriend. Who enough? Okay, Lemansky. Lemansky, pardon me for not ranking Bret Bielema based on what your old girlfriend had to say, or his old girlfriend. If we were ranking these guys on their relationships, who knows where we would be. David, good to see you. Spinnerbait. Kirk Ferentz has more 10 and 12 win seasons than 8 wins the last 7 years. Okay, spinnerbait. Do I really need to prove my point that Iowa's an 8-4 program? Do I really need to prove this? Do I? I guess I do. Okay. All right. Do I really need to prove this? Okay. I called Iowa an 8-4 program. What time frame do you want to use? Do you want to use his entire? Let's start with his entire stint at Iowa. He's won 178 and lost 110. If you go 8-4, you are winning twice as many as you're losing. 178 and 110, not twice as much winning as losing. Okay? So I'm giving him credit. I'm giving him too much credit. Okay. All right. Ferris just said I'm being way too harsh on Iowa. Why am I? I just called them an 8-4 program. And now I'm actually telling you that they're not even an 8-4 program most of the time. Okay. Then somebody said something about mid. I don't know what that means. Going midway through? The last 7 years. Oh, the last 7 years. Oh, we just look at 7 years. Okay, the last 7 years. We're going to cut it off just for comfort's sake. I love when people, of course, cut the years off to fit their narrative. So, of course, that's going to happen during the 2015 season when they went 12-2. Okay. All right, let's do some simple math here. 20-7, 28-12. 28-12. Man, that's too much math for me to do. Anyway, he's not won more than twice his games. No, I'm not being too harsh on Iowa. I said they're an 8-4 program. 12-2, 8-5, 8-5, 9-4, 10-3, 6-2, 10-4. Yes, they're so excessively above 8-4 because they went 12-2 because that's where you guys wanted me to start. I get it. You manipulate the numbers. Let's start the year before 7-6, or let's start the year before that 8-5, or the year before that 4-8. Why don't we do the last decade? That's fair. I want to go all time, his entire record. You want to go the last 7 years conveniently because it starts with the 12-2 year. So we'll do the last 10. That would be 2012 through 2021. 12-13, 19-19, 31-21, 39-26, 47-33, 56-37, 66-40, 72-42, 82-46. 82-46, 80-something and 40-something. Sounds like 8-4. Thank you. All right. No spin bait. You're moving the goalposts. You're moving the goalposts. Last year he went 10-4. Okay. Last year he went 10-4. 8-4, 10-4. Big deal. What's the enormous difference there? We can either go, don't tell me that I'm moving the goalposts when you're doing the same thing. I only moved at the goalposts because you moved the goalpost. 178 and 110 is not averaging 8-4. You conveniently, to fit your narrative, went the last 7 years. Why the last 7? Why not the last 6? Okay. He's a good coach. He's number 9 right now. Beyond, I'm not even going beyond the winning. The way he's handling the offense right now is atrocious. It makes me think that he wants to go 8-4 forever. And I have a ton of respect for this guy. He's been the dean of Big Ten coaches, and he continues to win and do a really good job on a number of fronts. But to ignore the offense that is atrocious, arguably, well, it's not the worst in the Big Ten, but it's close. To have one of the 30 worst offenses in the country almost every year, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Losing to Northern Iowa. And of course, we will tack on this year. Christopher, 178 and 110. That's his entire record. I would be pretty close to willing to bet he goes 8-4 this year. All right, let's get back to the rankings. Kirk Ferentz at 9, Bielema at 8. Then we come in with James Franklin, Penn State. He's recruited like a madman. No, so let's look at the really good and the really not awful. Let's look at the missteps. So James Franklin took over for Bill O'Brien, who needs to be credited with saving the Penn State program. I'm not going to go into that. I've gone down that path a number of times and explained my perspective on Bill O'Brien and how he saved Penn State football. Okay, James Franklin took over for Bill O'Brien, who stabilized it into 8-4, 7-5. His 2 years, Franklin takes over. He's got postseason play back in, and he's got his scholarships back. And he goes 7-6, 7-6. And he was really playing for his coaching future at that point. Started off 1-2 in 2016. They had that remarkable run in 2016, go to the Rose Bowl, win the Big Ten championship. From 2016 through 19, so that's 4 seasons. That was the pinnacle of the James Franklin run at Penn State, of course. In those 4 seasons, their record was 8-4. No, that was Kirk Ferentz. They won double digits 3 of those 4 years, 11-2, 11-2 type seasons, 10-3. There was a 9-4 in there. They finished in the top 10 in the country 3 out of 4 years. They won 3 New Year's 6, or they won 2, a Fiesta Bowl and a Cotton Bowl, New Year's 6 games. They went to 3. The other one was a Citrus Bowl, which is pretty much a New Year's 6 bowl of that type status. So from 2016 through 19, James Franklin's doing all the right things, and he's got his program on the upswing, except couldn't get past Ohio State. Except for 2016, they did. He did win a Big Ten championship. But even when they were losing to the Buckeyes, and the Buckeyes were by far the class of the league, Penn State played Ohio State tougher than anyone, and have played Ohio State tougher than anyone since 2016. So that is now 6 consecutive years of Ohio State-Penn State games in which Penn State has played Ohio State tougher than anyone. They've beaten them once, and they've played every game down to the wire. And 3 of those games had double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. So that's not all there is to coaching, is playing the best team in the league better than anybody else. But strong indicator there. The recruiting, he's done a great job recruiting. He's recruiting better than, O'Brien couldn't recruit. He had his hands tied behind his back. But Franklin recruiting better than Joe Paterno did during his latter portion of his career. But game management, 11-11 the last 2 years. Of course, this is a big year for James Franklin. For anybody who watched Penn State play last year and watched them against Ohio State, watched them against Iowa, watched them against Wisconsin, even Michigan, they were on occasion a top 10 team in the country. But they lost to Illinois. Who else did they lose to? They lost 6 games. They lost to Arkansas, of course, in the bowl game, but they didn't have half their team there. So it was a disappointing year for Penn State. So that's 2 straight. One was a COVID year. Big year for James Franklin, number 7 ranked coach in the Big Ten. And he certainly has his detractors, and I'm sure some of those are in the chat here. Garrett George says Penn State might want to beat Ohio State this season. They may want to. Christopher, why is it amazing to win at Vanderbilt? This is something that James Franklin did. Because great football players don't go to Vanderbilt. Because Vanderbilt's a losing situation, number one. Number two, it's academically difficult to get in. And who wants to play in front of 28,000 people on the SEC network at noon when you can play for other schools? So Vandy, to dig themselves out of that hole, I don't know what they need to do so much. But to go 9-4 at Vandy, and the schedule wasn't the toughest, but he's in the SEC East, going 9-4 2 consecutive years. It's pretty good. It's really good. Reasonable Gump. Yes, your point's well taken about James Franklin there, but at the same time, nobody else is going 9-4 at Vandy. If somebody else would go 5-7 at Vandy, that you could even argue if that was the equivalent of going 9-4 those 2 seasons when the SEC East was down. Nobody's even doing that. Sure, Derek Mason did it once out of like 5 years, 6 years. He went 6-7 one year. But so James Franklin by far did more with Vandy than, yes. It's not even close, not even debatable what he accomplished at Vandy, being so much better than anybody else. All right, back to the rankings. At number 6, we got Paul Crist. Steady as she goes. Wisconsin's really good. 6-1 in bowl games. The one that he lost was kind of a gift given away to Oregon in the Rose Bowl. 4 top 25 finishes, most of those in the 10 or 12 range in the nation. Just really good record. If Kirk Ferentz is Mr. 8-4, Paul Crist is Mr. 9-3. Do the math, 65-23. Okay. But are they these aren't criticisms of Paul Crist, but this is just to balance out the credit. Number one, he inherited the same program that Barry Alvarez built. Barry Alvarez built Wisconsin. And everybody since then, Bielema, Anderson, Crist, have been the beneficiaries. Now, true, they've all held it up to that top 15 in the nation standard for the most part. But Alvarez was the guy that took it from the abyss of the 1980s, leaving Notre Dame, coming to Wisconsin, saying, we're going to win a Rose Bowl, when that seemed like a joke. And within 4 years, that's what he did, won the Rose Bowl. And he won 3 Rose Bowls at Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez, and he handed it off to Bielema, and they've been able to maintain it, much to the credit of Alvarez originally building it, but also being the guy that helped maintain it as athletic director. So Paul Crist has done a really good job. I got a lot of respect for him. It's difficult to bring talent to Wisconsin, and they continue to be, this program continues to be what it's been for 30 years. And that's a program that is so really good, mainly because of the great offensive line, the great running backs, the great front seven on defense, but lacking playmakers on the outside, lacking a quarterback minus Russell Wilson 1 season, lacking maybe a star DB or 2 or 3. All right, at number 5, there's my guy, PJ Fleck, Minnesota. One of the more impressive things that he did at Minnesota to upgrade the situation there was his first season, he was 2-6. He took over a program that wasn't doing well, which is typically the case when you take over a program. It's not doing well. That's why they fire the head coach. So Fleck was 2-6 his first year at Minnesota in 2018. And he made a bold move. He fired Rob Smith, defensive coordinator. Fired him with 4 games left in the season. And he made some other changes. He switched out quarterbacks. That's when he elevated Tanner Morgan. So he switches out defensive coordinators with 4 games left to play and makes a change at quarterback. Minnesota beats a couple really good teams on a 4-game stretch to go 4-0, get to a bowl game, beat Georgia Tech by 24 in the bowl game, and finish 7-6. And really, since then, the program's been in good shape. The COVID year was not kind to Minnesota football at what? 2-4, 2-5, whatever they were, something in that range. Do I count it? Of course. They played football games. We had a national champion. We had conference champions. It counts. But when a coach is really good and his COVID season was not so good, I think that's worth noting. They finished in the top 10 in the country at 11-2 the year before. And then this past season, 9-4. Now, that Bowling Green loss is a bit curious. His offense is still conservative. Needs to find himself a quarterback in Tanner Morgan, who just played lights out basically because of the outside talent that they had on 2019 with Bateman and Tyler Johnson. Needs to find himself a quarterback. Now, this season's going to be a challenge. They lose that great offensive line. The running back situation, we'll see with Mo Ibrahim coming back. But PJ Fleck, my goodness, look at what he did at Western Michigan. 1 win, takes over the worst program in the conference, elevates them 13-0 within, 3 to 4 years. Back-to-back best recruiting classes in the MAC. Get to a Cotton Bowl. Can you imagine this happening again? Western Michigan going to the Cotton Bowl. Western Michigan went to a Cotton Bowl. That almost just doesn't seem possible, even though it was only 5 years ago. Western Michigan went to the Cotton Bowl. PJ Fleck can coach, motivate, lead a program, knows what he's doing. 9-4 last year at Minnesota. That's not easy. All right, let's take a break and get back to the comments. Oh boy, the reasonable Gump's calling me out here, possibly. And then we'll take calls as soon as I get through the rest of the rankings. We'll fire up the phone lines and take calls. Because my number one in the past in the Big Ten in particular has not been the obvious number one. Once Urban Meyer stepped down, let's see, our last rankings with him would have been 2018. He was the obvious one. But after that, I didn't have the winningest guy up there because I thought somebody else was doing a better job, but I will explain why my previous number one the last couple of years is no longer number one. Yeah, PJ Fleck. Okay, Andy. PJ Fleck had 1 good season. Other than that, he's average. Okay. Andy, back to context. PJ Fleck takes over a bad program that fired its coach. Not an awful program, but a marginal program. I just explained how he turned around the 2018 season. These first seasons for these head coaches, you have to understand, you have to give some leeway that first season. If a coach takes over a program and they take off the first season, all credit to the guy. But if they don't right away, you got to understand there's a lot that has to happen that first season. You're introducing a whole new coaching staff, environment, culture, everything to 105 players. So anyway, then he goes 11-2, finishes in the top 10. I guess that's the 1 good season you're alluding to. Well, at Minnesota going 9-4, like they did last year, I think that's pretty damn good as well. Oh, yes. Remember that 2000 game? I believe the final score was 27-16. I believe. All right. Shifty Eyes believes that Mel Tucker is the best coach in the Big Ten. Maybe he will turn out to be. I don't know that we can necessarily give him that kind of ranking now. Okay. So we are Penn State 76. Well, you're telling us that the last time that Minnesota was good was when Marion Barber and Lawrence Maroney were in the backfield. Those teams didn't go 11-2 and finish in the top 10 in the country and beat Auburn in a bowl game. Those teams didn't do that. So that's not the last time Minnesota was good. Rank the best group of 5 teams throughout the years. Okay. We could do that at some point. The best in the last 20 years has been Boise State. It's not even close. They have been good the entire time. At their worst, they're 8-5. And that's hardly ever happens. Boise State, by far and away. And then we'd have to look at Houston and Cincinnati and UCF and Navy and some other schools. All right, back to the rankings before we fire up the phone lines. At number 4, there's Mel Tucker. Cut his teeth at Georgia. Goes to Colorado for the one season. They had a pretty good year considering lack of talent at Colorado, 5-7. Goes to Michigan State. Again, COVID year. This ranking is based on one season. It's really based on one season. It's based on one season and him giving the impression that it's going to continue, that he's got everything under control, that he's recruiting great. And he is. He's doing a bang-up job in the recruiting ranks and then also on the transfer portal as well. But Mel Tucker has built this number 4 ranking based on one season. And I typically don't like to do that, raise somebody to that status based on that. But I'm seeing positive indicators in addition to the one big season at Michigan State. He's talking big. He's talking national championship type caliber stuff at Michigan State. We'll see if he can back it up. That's a lot. To go from where Michigan State is right now to a national championship, that's like going from 1-11 to them going 10-2 this last year. And that sounds ridiculous, but it is. It's almost a similar leap to go from like 2-10 to 10-2 than it is from 10-2 to actually then being able to cut through all that to get to the playoff and then to win 2 games in the playoff. We've only seen a few schools do it. And we've only seen really 2 do it consistently, somewhat consistently. On to number 3, my former number 1, Pat Fitzgerald, but another 3-9, and I just had to knock him down. Just had to knock him down. I believe he's phenomenal. Love what he's doing at Northwestern. He's always done just so much with that program. It's amazing. They had their first 2 number 1 draft picks in the NFL draft, this past NFL draft. Or maybe it was the one before. That was the one prior to the 2021 season. But 3-9, and not just 3-9. This was not Nebraska 3-9. This was Nebraska beating Northwestern by 7 touchdowns, 3-9. Like Northwestern, 2 of the last 3 years has been so incredibly bad. It's tough to watch. So, Pat, I love you. You're doing a great job. It's amazing what you've done. You finished in the top 25 5 times. That doesn't happen at Northwestern. There we see you at 16 games over 500 in the Big Ten. That's exceptional. So we still have you lofty at number 3. But 2 of your last 3 teams have been atrociously bad. Fits at 3. All right. One of these 2 last coaches has a better overall resume than the other one because he's been doing it much longer. And I give a ton of respect to Jim Harbaugh. And even before what he did in 2021, I was ranking him higher than most. It was a lot of Michigan haters and a lot of Michigan fans who were disgruntled with Jim Harbaugh that thought I ranked him too high. But I was still giving him some level of credit, even though the rankings are current. They're not historical rankings. They're current. You got to be able to run a program and coach if you go to Stanford and you're going to BCS bowl games. You're winning BCS bowl games at Stanford. And then you go to the NFL, you take over a 2-14 team and take them to 3 NFC championship games and to a Super Bowl. That's really remarkable. Then he goes to Michigan, 5-7 the year before he got there, and raises them to top 10 level. But of course, we know couldn't win the big games, couldn't do it until the big breakthrough. So this time next season, with more data points to go on, this might be your best coach in the Big Ten, might be the number 1 coach in the Big Ten. But I got to see it again. I got to see it again. Jim Harbaugh at number 2. All right. And finally, the guy that this is where the rankings become difficult. He's got everything going for him. He took over one of the best programs in the country. He has maintained it. He has. And the recruiting has been exceptional under him as it was under Urban Meyer. If Urban Meyer would have stayed at Ohio State and Ohio State would have done what they did under Ryan Day, under Urban Meyer, none of us would be surprised. If we said, oh, they went 13-1, won the Big Ten title, and lost a controversial game to Clemson in the playoff. Then they had this COVID season, blah, 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 but they went undefeated before blasting Clemson in the playoff and losing to Alabama in the national title game. Okay. And then third season, yeah, they tripped up against Oregon. They lost to Michigan. They didn't win the Big Ten title, still won the Rose Bowl and finished in the top 5 in the country. And that's what Urban Meyer did. We'd be like, a lot of people would be critical, thinking, okay, well, Urban Meyer is supposed to be running just second to Nick Saban, and sometimes he's succeeded Saban. So if Urban Meyer would have done what Ryan Day did, we'd all believe it. But some of us would be like, okay, maybe he's lost his fastball a little bit. So there are some chinks that to watch that national title game against Alabama was tough for any Ohio State fan. Were there legitimate excuses or reasons? Maybe. Tons of players out of that game, but they still got trampled. And then it took them a while to fix this last team. And maybe it should have been fixed on the defensive side after the Bama national title game, instead of waiting and seeing them get torched by Oregon. And then what was disheartening as well was to see them get torched schematically against Oregon. They were out-coached against Oregon. If you watch Ohio State's defense against Oregon, most of the time there was not even a defender in the screen. Like, they were so out of position. It wasn't about athleticism. It wasn't about effort. They got out-coached. They got just torn to shreds schematically. Against Michigan, they were in position to make the plays. They just got bullied. They got physically manhandled against Michigan. So Ryan Day is a great coach. Again, we can't evaluate all these coaches in the same context. Unfortunately, we can't have Ryan Day go to Northwestern and coach there for 5 years to see what it would look like, and have Pat Fitzgerald come to Ohio State and, send Brett Bielema to Michigan or Mike Loxley somewhere. That would be fascinating, of course, if we could do that, but we can't. So Ryan Day's at number 1. Again, Harbaugh at 2, Fitz at 3, Tucker at 4, although one season in the books, but I'm seeing good indicators off of that one season. PJ Fleck at 5, Crist at 6, James Franklin at 7, just signed a huge extension. Bielema at 8, Kirk Ferentz at 9, Greg Schiano at 10, Brom, Allen, Loxley and Scott Frost. This is the only conference in the nation that has no coaching turnover. So for the other conferences, I've had to try to rank a coach who either has never been a head coach or has never been a head coach at that school in that conference. Let's get to the comments, and then I will take your calls. Yes, Ferris, I know I'm just making a completely absurd ranking there. How could that possibly be to rank Ryan Day over Jim Harbaugh? And of course, we've now completed the Pac-12, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Big 10. So the SEC is coming soon. Garrett, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Understand we're not going to all agree. And so I appreciate the feedback. And this is why I did this one live, because I want to hear from all of you. Let's strike up the phone lines. Okay. You have not started a show session in Collins Studio and cannot yet receive calls on Mark Rogers' Voice of College Football. Please visit the Collins. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room. Phone lines are open. I will post the number here in just a second. 860-499-3332. Eight 860-499-3332. 860-499, all together now. 860-499-3332. Let's get to our first call. Oh, here we go. I know who this is.
To the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. I was kind of hoping you were going to sport the Clark Kent glasses tonight, but maybe later.
Well, give me one second to figure out why we are not here. Our Bluetooth is on. Okay, give me just a second. Let's see if we're connected now. Go ahead, David.
Well, as I said, I was hoping you were going to sport the Clark Kent glasses tonight, but maybe later there.
No, we're Superman tonight, David. We are Superman.
Okay.
I got to come ready as Superman against all the haters who don't like my rankings.
Well, I'm going to have let's go down the list. I have a couple of points of contention, and I'll get into your final rankings. First of all, isn't it interesting how everybody was like high on Tom Allen after 2020 or during the COVID year, and now he has a bad year, then you've got him knocked down. Would you have had him did you have him that much higher after 2020?
I got to tell you, I have no idea. I'm guessing about 7. I'll look it up.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious. Because kind of the ebb and flow of this kind of comes down to, sometimes you're only as good as your last season, especially, maybe like a program like in Indiana. Like a lot of people were high on PJ Fleck after that 2019 season when he goes, 11-2. So, a lot of it, I guess you have to kind of rethink it, season to season.
Yeah. So PJ, I try to do first and foremost what I would consider those coaches to be right this second. So I try to dismiss, but again, what are we ranking? We have to rank records. We have to rank the past, and we can't overreact to one season. So I try not to do that.
I hear you. I obviously, and I think you're looking for some kind of a track record here. Now, where did you have Crist again? I'm sorry, I forgot.
6.
You had him 6? Okay. I mean, I thought he could be a little bit higher than that. I do like Mel Tucker, where you had him at 4. I was going to ask with Tucker. Now, you had said with Sparty before, when I had asked you how good of a job is Michigan State, I think you had said that Michigan State is basically about like a top 20, top 25 job.
Michigan State?
Yeah.
If that. I guess it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, a top 20 to 25 job is not necessarily setting the bar extremely high.
Yeah, so I had Tom Allen at 6 last year.
Oh, you had Allen at 6? Okay. Well, I mean, obviously he had a great year after, the 2020 season. I just want to get back to Tucker real quick. So I'm just kind of looking at Tucker in the context of how good that job is. You look at what Mark D'Antonio did. He had an incredible run pretty much from like 2010 through, 15? I think they had, 5, 10-win seasons over that period of time? Was it 5 or 6?
Yeah.
I think it was 5 over. And then he had a playoff appearance, and then I think he won 2 Big Ten titles. Now, let me ask you.
He won 3.
Do you think that Tucker is...
Yeah, go ahead.
3, because he shared...
Yeah,
he shared
2010, 13, 15. Yep.
That's right. Okay. Do you think that Tucker's capable of duplicating that?
I think it's going to be awfully hard for him to duplicate that. Yeah, 2010 through 15. There was one like 7-6 year, but as you state, the rest were double-digit win seasons, 3 Big Ten championships, won a Rose Bowl, won a Cotton Bowl, went to a playoff. Mark D'Antonio did a heck of a job. That's the best Michigan State football has looked and performed since the mid-'60s.
Right. Yeah, since probably the Duffy Doherty era, like their heyday period of time over that period of time. And you know what, though? I think he also cut a period of time where I think, like, especially in maybe that 2010 to 2012, maybe even into 13 and 14, where I think the Big Ten was not as strong as it would become, let's say, in 15, 16, 17, in the next, 5 or 6 years, wouldn't you say?
Sure. Yeah, they took advantage of Ohio State. We're looking at a 6-year run for D'Antonio in which Ohio State was on probation for 1 year and had an interim coach for 1 year. And then Michigan was in the wilderness with Hoke taking over for Rodriguez.
Right.
And Penn State going through their mess.
Yeah. So, it may have, as good as a coach as I think D'Antonio was, I think he also benefited from that time frame. It'll be interesting to see if Tucker could have even close to that success, especially where, those programs on that side of the division are positioned right now. That's what I was wondering about, if he could even come close to duplicating that.
No, I don't think he will.
Okay. So you think he gets to the point where he gets it to like maybe a 9-3 type program?
I think that's going to be slightly high, but that's going to be a typical Michigan State record, sure. But he's not going to win. Okay. I would be willing to bet a large sum of money right this second, if we're saying 9-3 is the standard, that Mel Tucker will not win 75% of his games at Michigan State.
Okay, I could see that.
No,
I could see that. I could see him, mix. 9-3 seems about right. 10-2 seems like, in the right type of year he could strike there. I don't think I could ever see him getting in. Yeah, maybe he could get to Indianapolis once, but that would be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to pull off. Of course, he almost did it this past season, so I don't want to discredit what he's already done because it's been remarkable, but it's remarkable in a very short spurt. It's one season. And there are indicators that it's sustainable to a degree. He's recruiting well. He's making good moves in the transfer portal, and he's talking a good game, which I'm not discounting that because he's backing it up. Had one great season, yes.
Yeah, I just, it's going to be interesting going forward. I'm just kind of speculating on it. I will say this to the top of your list. I can certainly understand why you can make case for Jim Harbaugh too. I would ask this question, and this is kind of, and obviously I just started to listen to your show recently within the last few years. So I wouldn't have gotten a chance, and maybe you have some of the clips from back when you were doing the show in 2015 when he was originally hired. But I guess if we could go into the time warp machine and go back to when he was originally hired, and Dave Greenshield and Mark Rogers can have this conversation in 2015, and I was to say to Mark Rogers, okay, 7 years later, 7 seasons in, 7 seasons in, how many Big Ten titles does Jim Harbaugh have right now? What do you think you would have been saying in 2015?
Oh,
mind you, that was still Ohio. Go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
No, I was just going to say, mind you, I understand that was Ohio State still coming off of a national title and, at kind of Urban having us at the height of where he had us at the time.
Yeah, and that would have been the difficult call to make. And I don't remember. I would guess that somebody, at least one person, asked me at some point that type of question. But I raved about the Jim Harbaugh hire. What was not to like about it? Being a guy that just wore maize and blue just so proudly on top of what he had accomplished at Stanford and with the 49ers, what was not to love about that hire? But yeah, sure. to measure that against, this is not Jim Stanford. This is not Jim Harbaugh walking into Stanford or walking into an ACC job or whatever lower level Power 5 type scenario where there was no bully there. Yeah, to try to measure, okay, the optimism of Jim Harbaugh being in Michigan versus the task of climbing the mountain and knocking off Urban Meyer in Ohio State. I don't know what I would have said. I would have played the probabilities. That's what I typically do. Play the probabilities and say, okay, well, he's taken over a 5-7 team. I probably picked him to go 8-4 automatically, I guess. I don't remember that we would be sitting here in 20 going into the 22 season and Jim Harbaugh would have, I think I would have only overshot it by one Big Ten title. Maybe, okay. Because you got to consider, yes, right. I didn't know how long Urban Meyer would be there and how good his successor would be, but I would have thought, well, Urban Meyer's only been coaching at Ohio State for 2 seasons or 3 seasons, and he's the best and arguably the best in college football. I know Nick Saban supporters, and rightfully so, not taking themselves back 8 years. That seems ridiculous now, but you could make a case in 2014-15 that Urban Meyer's the best coach in college football and everything was rolling. And then you still had to consider that there was going to be somebody else possibly pop up and win a title. So Harbaugh's been there for 15 through 21, 7 seasons. So 2 Big Ten titles, I would have thought would have been fairly optimistic, but reasonable to expect.
Okay. Yeah, because I harken back to like a discussion that we had, I think prior, like on like the Texas-Oklahoma dynamic, in the Big 12, where you had said that like over a 10-year span, you would and maybe that's a different comparison altogether, but you had said over a 10-year span, I think you would say that Oklahoma and Texas, like Texas would win at least 4 Big 12 titles the way it used to be situated in the old Big 12. You would think that they would win that many over a 10-year period of time. And I would think, and I say this as an Ohio State fan, I would say over a 10-year period of time, you would expect them to at least win 2 or 3. I would say.
You would think
that's
so.
Somewhat realistic.
Yeah, it's realistic. It's realistic to expect or make the expectations, but based on what's played out for the last 20 years, why is Michigan any better than Penn State or Wisconsin? So
True. Although I always thought that their program got put behind the eight ball by two bad coach hires, which is sometimes is a tough hole to dig out of. With the Rich Rod and the Hoke era, it didn't do them any favors. Although I will say, interesting enough about the Hoke era for them is a majority of the players on that 2016 team, which very easily could have won that game against Ohio State. We all know it, and gone on and won a Big Ten title. Majority of those players, I believe, on that team were Hoke's players. So he did recruit pretty well.
Yeah, he did a decent job recruiting. Absolutely.
All right, now on to the number one.
Yes.
And, I say this obviously as an Ohio State fan. It's interesting. The last few Ohio State coaches, and we cataloged this once before, but just real quickly, interesting. I give John Cooper a lot of blame for a lot of things, but he's the one coach that wasn't left with the cupboard bare. Unfortunately, our old friend, Coach Earl, did not leave him with a cupboard that was very full, in the late 80s, as we've talked about before, right? I don't remember what the term that John Cooper used as far as talent that he inherited, but it wasn't very good, right, Mark?
No.
But, conversely, Jim Tressel inherited a lot of good players from John Cooper. A majority of the players that he won the national title with in 2002 were Cooper's players. Urban Meyer, say what he will about, Tressel's talent. He inherited a lot of good players from Jim Tressel. In fact, he won 24 games in a row with Jim Tressel's players. And a number of those players actually were a few of those guys were actually on the 2014 national title team. So, and conversely, I think Ryan Day obviously inherited a very talented team, from, Urban Meyer. I would say this is an interesting year because these are all his guys now. These are all his recruits. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, let's see what he can do now. Obviously, this is his program. He's gotten the coaching staff where he wants it to be. I do think, I will say, and you guys kind of talked about this with the defense, and I posted this in the Buckeye chat today. I think that the thing that kind of hurt him, and you talked about the bad performance, is, and I'm not making an excuse, but he made a couple of bad hires, and that cost him on the defensive side of the ball. But I do think he expected to have Jeff Hafley for longer than 1 year. Usually, if you hire a defensive coordinator, you don't hire him and say, "Oh, I'm only going to have this guy for 1 year, and he's going to leave after 1 year." I know that's college football, and these guys are ambitious, but still, that's a fairly. I bet you that was kind of a rug pulled out on him. I'm not making an excuse for him, but usually you keep a D coordinator for longer than 1 year, and I think that hurt him. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, Mark.
Yeah, coaching turnovers not easy for most, and especially for a newer head coach. So that's understandable. Yeah.
And like I said, I think he benefited. I think the Combs hire wasn't a very good hire, and obviously he paid for it. And I still think the Al Washington hire at linebacker, and you guys talked about it on the show. The linebacker recruiting fell off until the last couple years. So. But, I think I would say this is a crossroads year, but I think it's a very important year, because the measuring stick is the last two coaches we've had. And, we know what the last two coaches we've had have done. So, and like I said, these are his players. He's got the staff that he wanted. He put it together. He's made his replacements. So, and you know what? I say from an Ohio State fan that this would be a year where, especially considering the offense you're going to have, if you're going to get it done, it should be this year.
Getting it done is winning a national championship, which is, I understand your point. And everybody else is aiming at this year because of Stroud and so forth. But, and there are going to be years in which, the goal is still going to be a national championship, but it's going to be somewhat unrealistic because of a number of factors. But yeah, I get your point, but I just think that if Ryan Day, let's say, has a 12-year run at Ohio State, well, that's going to be the goal every year. So
Yeah, I mean, I just think with the recruiting and with where that's at, you think by we're going into year number 4 that would be a possibility. And it's also the standard. It's the standard, Mark. That's where I'm going to go with that.
Yep.
So.
All right, David.
Overall, good stuff, Mark. You have yourself a good evening now.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. The voice of college football. Who's next up?
Well, I'm glad to see you got your trackpad fixed, Mark. That pleases me greatly.
I did.
And your camera's not going out of focus, so that's
a good thing.
Direction as well.
Absolutely. And yes, we've got everything in order, so including our Big Ten coaches rankings. They have never been better.
That's what I heard, and I was summoned on Twitter to. Apparently, my name was mentioned, and I was summoned to call in. So
your name was mentioned.
I haven't.
Maybe in the chat.
Somebody. No. Somebody on Twitter told me that I needed to call in because something about Iowa, and I was brought up about something.
Oh, I did not say anything concerning
maybe it was
you.
In the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
I would not badmouth you behind your back. Not at all. No, I did not say.
All right.
Do you need to see the rundown of coaches from 1 through 14 in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay. Can you see your screen?
Let's. I can. Yep. I got a bit of a lag, but I can see my screen.
I should take this from the. I gave it away, but we'll go from the bottom. Frost at 14. Loxley at 13. Allen at 12. Brom at 11. Schiano 10. Ferentz at 9. Bielema 8. Franklin 7. Crist 6. Fleck 5. Tucker 4. Fitzgerald for 3. Harbaugh and Day. And a lot of context, of course, has to be given to all of that, which I've discussed over the last 45 minutes or so.
So you're pretty low on Kirk, and I'm knowing you. I know you have a formula for this. Let me address one thing, just my opinion on these rankings. I don't want to tie up your line too long, but I would personally. You had Allen below Schiano. I don't know that I would go that far, given the fact that Allen led Indiana to what, 2 years ago? Were they 6-2?
Yes.
I mean, that's win percentage wise, and that's conference only. It's much better than Schiano's ever done at Rutgers, even before he made his NFL journey. And granted, it's one season. I understand that, but I might have a bit of a disagreement with that assessment, but that's kind of splitting hairs down there. I would probably, the Pat Fitzgerald one's intriguing because we talk about this roller coaster every year. But Northwestern is maybe the toughest place to win besides Vanderbilt. So I can understand where you're coming from with that one. Yeah, it's hard. And I mean, I'd love to tell you you're wrong about those rankings. Excuse me. I just don't know who you're going to move below Kirk. And I that's not disrespectful to Kirk, but
and not to cut you off, Corey, but I made this point. I hope that I made it clear. Not just concerning the Big Ten coaches, but the other conferences that I've ranked, is anytime you do rankings, and I remember doing this as being a guy in personnel management at ESPN, we would rank employees. And what do you think the caliber of employee was that we had in production operations at ESPN? It was extremely good. But if you're going to rank 130 people, somebody's going to be like 121 or 111 or 109. Does that sound good? Well, if you've got a really good staff, maybe you've got 10 that shouldn't be there. If you're really at the top of, you're the worldwide leader in what you do. And now we're going to evaluate that or correlate that to Big Ten coaches who should be near the best at what they do. Yeah, number 11 doesn't sound good, but I think all of these guys, the only two guys that I have any reservation about being able to be up to the challenge are the last two. And that doesn't mean I would be surprised if Loxley started going 8-4 and having a pretty strong run at Maryland and having a decent career there, or Scott Frost turning around the Nebraska situation to a certain extent and going 8-4 and starting to get to bowl games on a regular basis and turning it around. But they haven't shown me much. They have yet to give me too much confidence.
Here's the deal, Mark. Here's the deal. And again, I'm not saying one way or the other. I think it would be it would be very easy to flip Kirk and PJ. I think you've got PJ a bit high. Now, granted, he's been in Minneapolis a much shorter tenure than Kirk has been here. I get that, but I think Iowa fans that would come to Kirk's defense and say how many West titles has Brom and how many West titles has Fleck won. And I mean, I think we know the answer to that. So in comparison to Kirk, who's won 2 of those West titles, and of course we're just talking about division titles because PJ and Jeff Brom were nowhere around here when Iowa won the Big Ten in 02 and 04. Or I guess my big thing on rankings, you said it exactly. You hit the nail on the head. The Big Ten is, well, I think you could argue the Big Ten is the conference with the best coaches top to bottom. Is that fair, Mark? I know you think the SEC is the best conference by far.
Well, that's based on talent. Yeah, I agree with you. And I
exactly.
hate to run to judgment because you know how I am. I'd like to say anytime I'm brought a topic like that, hang on, let me go to the drawing board and really assess it and go coach by coach to make sure I'm in good shape. But without dissecting it, yes, I believe that the Big Ten is the best coaches top to bottom in college football.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Kirk is a top 25 coach nationally, Mark. I mean, I don't think you can. I really, and maybe you will debate this. I don't think that's debatable, given the fact that Iowa is basically they've established themselves as a top 25 program year in and year out. I don't know how you could possibly argue that he is not a top 25 coach nationally. Now, he may not be a top 7, top 8 coach in the Big Ten. But again, I think what you brought up about context is appropriate there. So, I mean, would you quibble at all with the suggestion that Kirk is a lock for a top 25 national? I mean, from a national perspective?
I'll reiterate the context that I placed on the ranking for Kirk. And again, not each spot in any rankings, at least the way I rank, is created equal, meaning you can have a gap between 3 and 4, and then you could have them bunched up between 4 and 9, for example. And it could be razor close between 3 and 4 and 5 spots. I posted a video on YouTube when I first started a YouTube channel, was not very serious about it. One of the very first videos I ever posted was in 2010, and I listed Kirk, and I don't remember exactly where he was placed, but I had him in the top 10 coaches in America. I set this all up when I got to the Ferentz portion of this rankings to say, let's go back 20 years. Guy takes over for a legend in Hayden Fry. They're arguably the worst program in the Big Ten. They go 1-10. It takes him a couple of years to dig out of that. And I said, that's the good side of what he accomplished early. That transition, boom, they took off. But I said, also understand and imagine, Iowa fans, think about finishing 3 consecutive seasons now, number 8 in the final rankings. Imagine doing that now. And that's what he accomplished. But that's been a long time ago.
It has been.
And
yeah, I mean,
and since that run of 02, 3, and 4, You know, those 09 and 10 seasons, or I might be mixing them up, 08 and 09 were really high marks, really good teams. They could have won Big Ten titles. And then, of course, the 15 season. And what we've seen over the past 4 seasons has been really good. It's not nearly been as good enough to win a Big Ten championship. And a lot of Iowa people, and even maybe non-Iowa people, got offended because I said something about he's coaching an 8-4 program. And that was not a knock. That's basically what he's delivering.
Okay, so here's the deal.
And then I touched upon the offense. I do think maybe doing these shows with you and really dissecting it and looking at it and having it pounded in my head, not by you, but just by the conversation, that it's really hit me that this guy has done nothing about a horrendous offense.
Yeah. I mean, that's, but at the same time, Mark, there are Iowa fans that will go to the grave in Kirk Ferentz's defense, right or wrong. I mean, so it is context, but the context is the Big Ten Conference, and it's not hard to measure championships. It's not hard to measure win-loss. It's not hard to measure national success. But I think oftentimes with Iowa fans, and I don't want to turn this into an Iowa show, but Iowa fans they do the same thing in basically every sport, but primarily men's basketball and football, of course. Success here is measured based upon the history of this program. It's not measured based upon the national landscape. So everything is, well, this has been sustained success, of the Hayden Fry years, or, with basketball, it's always, you want to go back to the Todd Licklider era. And I've been a part of that. I don't know what you call that, but it's sort of I don't want to call it a loser's mentality, because again, it's all relative to what you view as success. But I think there are programs out there, some of those programs that were at the top of your coaching list in the Big Ten, that they're going to make changes based upon the national scene. And who was it that was talking? Was it maybe your conversation with Zach Smith? I don't remember where I heard this, but it was a great point that I heard some pundit bring up about Iowa. And it was basically, and again, I'm not in Kirk's head. I'm supposed to be the Iowa expert. I don't know what Kirk's mentality is this late in his career, but does Kirk Ferentz really have a ambition to make the college football playoff? Because that's what successful programs that are doing it, you have to have an ambition and drive. You're competing against the best of the best. And that's going to carry over into recruiting. It's going to carry over into every aspect of coaching and every aspect of the game. Mark, what do you think? I mean, based upon what you just described and everything you know about Iowa and how things are carried out in Iowa City as it relates to coaching hires and decision making and whatnot, and even schematics and play style, do you believe that Iowa, from the top down, is really concerned with making a college football playoff anytime soon?
Well, before I answer that question,
I don't think they are, Mark. I mean, whether fans want to think that, I just don't think that's really priority number one.
So I'll say that first and foremost, Corey, it's not an issue with you hijacking the show. We've got nobody else waiting on the lines, and this way too many times becomes Ohio State, Michigan, SEC hour, and that can go on ad nauseum all night. And all I hear from our SEC people and Ohio State and Michigan. So this is a breath of fresh air. That first and foremost. Secondly, we suffer too much in this. We suffer too much in this society with a gold medal mentality. So I first want to state that what Kirk Ferentz has accomplished is difficult. It's to be commended. It's difficult to go out there and do the things that are done at these major programs to succeed year in, year out. Okay. That said,
absolutely.
I go even beyond what the results have been in trying to determine what Iowa's goals are, and have gone to what is stated, how he frames the conversation, how he answers questions to give me confirmation to back up what you're saying, that it doesn't sound like he thinks along those lines, and those are the goals.
Yeah, I mean, again, for people who aren't familiar with the situation here, if you were concerned with winning a national championship anytime soon, then you're not going to promote your offensive coordinator that's put out a 120 ranked offense over at least the last year, and 100 plus ranked offense basically throughout his tenure here. You're not going to promote him to a position, not only keeping his position as coordinator, but promoting him to be a quarterback coach, also as a former offensive line coach, who, by the way, I brought up Chuck Long's interview on the radio the other day, Mark, when we were talking, and his comments. One other thing I thought was interesting that he made, a comment that he made about Brian Ferentz, was he has never, these are Chuck's words, he's never heard of a situation where a former offensive lineman and an offensive line coach went from coaching the line / tight ends, because as you know, Mark, there's some very, very, well, I mean, that's not a groundbreaking. Coaching tight ends and coaching the line is very similar in many respects. And Brian has, I think, proven himself as a tight end coach, but he's never heard of a situation where you promote an offensive line coach to be your quarterback coach. And so, I mean, that just tells me whether, and I'd love to get people's opinions who are on the outside looking in and listening to this, because I just don't know how on earth, and I maybe I'm totally delusional. Maybe there are fans that actually believe that that's what Kirk is doing, that they believe Brian is the prodigal son, and he's going to make this thing click, and they're going to go from 120 to top 20. I don't know, but I think you're absolutely right. I just don't think the message that it's sending to the fan base is, we're not concerned with the national scene. But at the same time, Mark, it's okay for the most part. He gets away with it, whether you like it or not, because of what we brought up earlier, the expectations, and they're based upon Iowa. They're not based upon college football. And I'm as a young person, it's unfortunate and it's frustrating, but that's just what it is. And until that mentality changes, you're not going to see substantial changes as it relates to staffing or recruiting philosophy or schematics. I think that's probably what it comes down to. And you're not going to see a difference until Kirk retires. And that doesn't mean you don't appreciate what Kirk's given to the program, but I think you get my gist. Let me real quickly, Mark, and again, I'll hop off after this. As you were talking here a minute ago, I went through your rankings, and let me just read you off my rankings. Now, this is purely based upon just my gut feeling. It's not based upon statistics, because I haven't had the time to break all this down. But give me your thoughts on these. So I've got Scott Frost at 14 in the conference. To me, there's just absolutely no question about it at this point. I've got Michael Loxley at 13. I still don't understand why Maryland hired him, although they had a decent year last year. But didn't he have like one of the worst records of any Power 5 coach before they hired him back? I mean, I know he was on the Alabama staff, but am I right in saying that, Mark?
You are right in saying that. He not only was 3-31, I believe was the coaching record there, he had 2 off-field incidents, like serious incidents that caused him to be suspended. I don't get the hiring myself. Yeah,
don't quite understand that one. And I've got at 12, I've got Schiano. I think the verdict is still very much out on Schiano. I understand he had some success at Rutgers when they were in the Big East. Totally different animal now. So I've got them at 12. I do have Allen ahead of him at 11, given the 2020 year. I get it was the COVID year, and certainly last year did not inspire confidence in Allen, although I think he's a good man from everything I understand. You may disagree. I have to look back at your rankings. I've got Bielema at 10, and that's probably low. And maybe I'm fixated on, you got to prove it to me at Illinois first. But you've made the point of what he did at Arkansas. Obviously what he did at Wisconsin. So maybe, as I'm going through this, maybe I'm selling him a bit short. 9, I've got Jeff Brom, although I'd love to rank him higher, Mark, because he's been Iowa. Basically, Jeff Brom is Iowa's daddy, to put it in very simple terms, because he has completely outcoached Iowa every single year for the most part. I mean, even the years Iowa has won, there has been, I think, a pretty substantial talent gap, and he's made up for that. So Purdue would be my number 9. Number 8, I would go with PJ. Just given I don't have the overall record. Do you have the overall comparison, just record-wise or win percentage-wise, between Kirk and PJ, Mark?
Yeah, I would throw it up there, but maybe my trackpad's back working. Okay, I was just given an indication that it was not working. Okay, so PJ, let me pull it up, 35-23 at Minnesota. Compared to whom?
Okay. To Kirk.
Well, during that same time frame, you're going back to 2018. So whatever.
No, I don't think you can just go to that. I don't think you can go through that time frame, because we're just talking coaching resumes. I mean, Kirk's resume stretches back to 99, so I think you got to take his total resume.
178 and 110. It's pretty comparable.
Okay. Comparable. PJ's got to prove he can win championships, I think. And although Kirk has struggled to do that, he's done it. He's done it, I guess. So that's why I'd give him the nod. So he'd be, PJ would be 8. Kirk would be 7. At 6, I've got Mel Tucker. I like Mel, but again, got to prove it to me. Peach Bowl's great. Got to be a little bit more sustained. And he's just not been a head coach long enough for me to place him above some of these seasoned guys. And then 5, I've got Penn State. 4, I've got Wisconsin. 3, I've got Paul Crist, excuse me. 3, I've got Pat Fitzgerald, and then 2, I've got Harbaugh and Day as number 1. I struggle with Day, Mark, because I know you're an Ohio State guy. And I heard the latter part of that last conversation you had on the phone, but I struggle with that pick for obvious reasons, because I just don't know how do you really compare a guy like Ryan Day, who's working with the level of talent that he's working with, in comparison to a guy like Pat Fitzgerald? I just don't know how you can even reconcile that.
Well, that's the difficulty in any of these rankings, coaches' rankings. So I ranked, and I got blasted for this, that I ranked Pat Fitzgerald as the best coach in the conference for 2 or 3 consecutive years, and ranked Day behind him even after he went to a national championship game, even after he went 13-1 and could have been in a national championship game. I was ranking him behind Pat Fitzgerald. There is no way to know what Ryan Day would do at Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald with all the resources at Ohio State. It would be fascinating to know, but we don't. So that's the complexity of this. Is it's not ranking NFL head coaches who have had stays at similar places with similar resources. It's even in the Big Ten, it's all over the board.
Mark, did you get a chance to watch the Brian Ferentz press conference yet?
I did not.
All right. I'm gonna again hold you to that. Yeah. One final thing, and then I'll get off the line. One final thing, I'll get off the line. Just remember, if you're an Iowa fan or not, Iowa had every opportunity to hire Randy Hedberg. Okay, and I'm going to stick on that, and I'm not going to. I will not forget that, because that is, in my lifetime, one of the more to me, blunders. And one of the bigger showings of nepotism that I can remember, and that doesn't make Kirk Ferentz a terrible person. That doesn't make him, enemy of the state, but it's an absolute blunder, and it's an absolute, I think it's a disgrace. And I'm not, whatever the reason is, I think it's an absolute disgrace. So for anybody who doesn't know who Randy Hedberg is, who's on here, because I know a lot of these fans on here are fans of high major programs, but people should know who Randy Hedberg is, Mark. And we'll never know. With that being said, we'll see what happens. I appreciate you taking my call, Mark, as always. And I look forward to talking about, I think we got quarterbacks coming up next Tuesday, don't we?
We will attack the quarterbacks at Iowa. So for anyone listening right now that's not aware, this is Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and we do our Iowa show at the Voice of College Football on our Iowa channel every Tuesday at 4:30 Central. It's a great time, great college football discussion. And one last thing I'll hit you with, Corey, because I think this is reasonable, ironically, and not to pardon the pun there, Reasonable Gump. Reasonable Gump has commented, and I posted it to the screen, and I think this is fair. So while you have more emphatically said that you believe that the Big Ten has the best coaches, and I, again, was a bit hesitant because I usually like to go to the drawing board and make sure I'm speaking accurately. As he is stating here, Reasonable Gump, it's difficult to state anyone in the Big Ten is better than Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and Jimbo Fisher. That is difficult to sell that. I would agree with that.
Well, I think it's, again, very hard. It's very hard when you have a guy like Pat Fitzgerald who has been loyal to a program that I would not be surprised to see Pat Fitzgerald succeed like a Kirby Smart or a Jimbo Fisher. Would you?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. He just hasn't done it, nor had the opportunity.
Well,
but they have, so they've proven it.
I said Jason Day. Ryan Day has, right? Ryan Day has.
Not to the extent of these. Not to the extent of these three.
Jimbo Fisher.
He's won a national championship. Is Ryan Day a better coach than Jimbo? I take Ryan Day today over Jimbo Fisher. And is he? Are the records comparable? No, Ryan Day's blowing him out of the water in regards to winning percentage. Right. But is Ryan Day going to continue to win 90% of his games forever? Well, Urban Meyer did, so maybe you will. But it's going to be very difficult to keep up the pace of 34-4. So he's got a better record than Jimbo Fisher, but Fisher's won a national title. Of course, Kirby Smart's running. Saban and Smart are running what are the two best programs in the country right now. Ohio State's got an argument there, but you can't argue those two off the top two spots right now. So, and of course, Saban's the greatest of all time.
If we're just going off national championships, though, Mark, then let's throw Gene Chizik into the mix.
Yeah, but Gene Chizik is not currently coaching in the SEC.
Okay, so if he got a job tomorrow, would he be ahead of Ryan Day in your ranking?
No, but we're ranking the SEC versus the Big Ten. I'm just making a point that I'm passing on the comment made by Reasonable Gump, and it's tough to argue that, yeah, I guess I would have all three of those coaches ranked ahead of anybody in the Big Ten right now.
It's an interesting conversation. I'll need more time to delve into it because you've done a lot more well thought out research. So, as always, Mark, I appreciate the time and best wishes for your final 2 hours of the show.
Let's not wish that upon me.
I look forward to listening to George in an hour and 55 minutes.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Again, that is Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Does an amazing job covering Iowa football, basketball on his YouTube channel right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And we've got a Tuesday night Iowa show that you should all show up for. Tuesday, 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central. And again, I think that's a reasonable comment made by Reasonable Gump. And now I am having all sorts of difficulties because I've got to hook up my trackpad that was letting me down. It's obviously run out of power, but again, there are more issues with it than that. But so I'm over here going left-handed. So bear with me. Let's get to our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Hello.
Hey, good evening, Mark. It's J-Dub calling in from Des Moines.
J-Dub.
Corey, the Hawkeye fan.
Yeah, what's going on?
As an Alabama alum, but as an Illinois native who has had to live in Iowa, of course that's a professional choice, but I've lived here since 1990. I absolutely delight in seeing Hawkeye fans wallow in misery. I have no love whatsoever for the Hawkeyes, but I do have respect for Kirk Ferentz. The one thing I wonder about Ferentz is offensive linemen, tight ends, he can pour them into the NFL, and yet somehow the offense never does a damn thing. It's because he can't recruit. He either cannot recruit, can't draw, or doesn't know what to do with when he gets talent at the skill positions on offense. It's kind of like the problem Brian Kelly had at Notre Dame. Great offensive linemen, great tight ends, but the receivers, the backs, and the quarterbacks have been leave a lot to be desired. And I'll be the first to come to Ferentz's defense as a gentleman and a nice guy. But I always remember a conversation I had with quasi-legend Gary Dolphin, who's the play-by-play guy for Iowa sports on the radio. And about 10 years ago, I ran into him at a banquet. And I caught up to him. I had an Alabama thing on, and he was giving me a hard time. But I told him, I said, how long is Iowa going to endure 8-4 with a smile? And of course, this was, 10, 12 years ago, which is all they've done since then. And he said to me, Iowa's not even concerned about playing the game that Alabama's playing. That Alabama is playing a different game. And it's what Corey said, it's what you have said. I don't think there's any drive at all in Iowa City to compete on the national level. It's just not in their target. They don't, it's not that they don't want to be nationally successful. It's just they're not driven to do it. Is that something that you see?
Yeah, to give you an example, Ferentz made a comment during a news conference. This was since the end of last season. This was just a couple months ago. And he was asked something about winning and trying to elevate the program and get to the next level. This was during a news conference. And he made a statement about being top 5. And he just kept saying top 5 winning percentage. And I heard that and I about jumped out of my chair. I was like, he's not top 5. I was not top 5 in the nation in winning percentage. What's he talking about? And I start going,
Right.
You know me, I'm listing the da-da-da, they're behind da-da-da-da. And Corey's like, hang on, Mark. He means top 5 in the Big Ten. That's his perspective. He means top 5 in the Big Ten. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay. If he would have said that, no, he's like, we're top 5 in this and top 5 in that. I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah. I go back to the Welcome to Tuscaloosa press conference that Nick Saban had when he said his goal coming to Tuscaloosa, he says, I want to be the team. I want us to become the team that other teams say, I hate playing those guys. I hate having to play them. That attitude doesn't exist in Iowa, and it never has. They've never wanted to be the team that everybody else hated to play. It's just a complete difference in what you're willing to accept. And if you're willing to accept 8-4 and a nice guy and we'll beat Iowa State and we'll compete with Wisconsin and we'll win the pig from Minnesota, and every once in a blue moon we'll pull one out of the back and knock off Ohio State or Michigan when we're not supposed to. Of course, that same year we'll lose to Indiana. Then you can be Iowa. You can be that all day long, and that's what they're willing to accept. They're not willing to make the effort. It's just not in them. If I was a Hawkeye fan, it would drive me absolutely crazy. I mean, for some reason, they just don't have a desire to compete at the high level, and it shows up in everything they do.
And I do think it's a difficult thing to accomplish, especially where they're located in the country. But and this may be a ridiculous comparison to make, but I'm going to make it anyway. If I sat here and said, so my goal is to deliver for all of you, thanks to your help as well, with the phone calls, with the contributions and the live chat, the whole deal, deliver the best college football show that anybody can find anywhere. That's my goal. And I'm talking about find it on Fox or ESPN or anywhere. That's what my goal is. Now, I may never deliver that, but that's my goal. Now, I could say, well, I don't have a producer. I don't have a staff of 15 or 20. I don't have researchers. I don't have a $1 million budget to go get some sponsors and redo this set and do first-rate graphics. So, no, I can't do it. I resign myself. No, we're just going to do exactly what we're doing right now. We're going to keep doing it for the next 20 years. And this is going to be our 8-4 show. This is what we are. We're not going to strive to do any better, because I really can't do any better. And everybody just needs to understand that and be happy with that. And I'm happy with that. And that's what we're going to do. So
that's where they are. But I wanted to I want to get, and I can't believe I'm kind of embarrassed, upset at myself, and I had to bring up Alabama because I was trying to stay away from that. But I really wanted to see the fat with a man with Pat Fitzgerald, who I think has just done a wonderful job in a difficult position in Northwestern. I don't think people appreciate the fact that since he's come in there, some of the Northwestern's facilities, their recruiting room, their actual physical plant, for lack of a better word. They're like the euphemism, everybody kind of throws out the blanket facilities, but Northwestern's considered some of the best in the country. I mean, they've really stepped it up, and considering the small built-in fan base that's Northwestern, so he hasn't got a whole state of 12 million to. I mean, Illinois kids don't grow up dreaming about playing for Northwestern, so he doesn't have a built-in, ready-made recruiting base, and then throw in the academics, throw in the fact that it's Northwestern and all that goes with it. And he's got 109 wins, and what is he, I think he's 500 in bowl games. I mean, here's an example of a program that they know they're not going to be right up at the top of the national, but he's trying. I mean, he's wanting to win the Big Ten. He's aggressive about it. His recruiting, from everything I hear, and I've got a lot of family and friends in the Chicago area, he's just absolutely beloved. I think Fitzgerald often gets overlooked when the national conversation for coaches come around. I think he's fantastic, and I think Corey might have brought it up. I can't believe that one of the larger programs hasn't, when they had their openings, didn't try to come in and swoop on him and take him away.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hear you. All right, man, we've got some other calls on the line. Is there anything else you wanted to hit, J-Dub?
No, I just wanted to throw that in there. And thanks, Mark. As always, enjoy the show. And hey, everybody, if you haven't done so, it takes 3 seconds and costs you 0 pennies. Hit that thumbs up.
There you go. J-Dub, we appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. This this rankings of the Big Ten coaches, then it's kind of made its way into the SEC and elsewhere, especially the SEC. I don't see any other fan bases chiming in defending the ACC coaches of the Pac-12 or the Big 12, but this is what it is. I just read the comments that are in the live chat have been pretty good here. So this has spurred on a pretty good debate here. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, Mark, this is Reasonable Gump here.
There he is.
How you doing this evening?
I highlighted your comment. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was reasonable. Yes, I would agree. When I throw it all together and I do a top 10 list, I cannot imagine that I will not be placing all three of those coaches above anybody in the Big Ten. I don't know that necessarily that Jimbo, I've got some mixed analysis on him, but still he's
well, I did too, Mark, but I gotta say you must think the world of Jimbo Fisher more so than I do, because you had, if I'm not mistaken, you had Texas A&M as your top fifth program right now, and a few months ago. And
yeah,
I remember seeing that, and I thought, oh my God, it's official. Mark has lost his mind, because I don't agree with that. But if you have them that high, then based off winning nothing, you must think the world of Jimbo Fisher.
Projecting forward. I'm not ranking the past. Now, of course, you got to go on past results because all we have to go on, but also
even projecting forward, Mark, that has a lot to do with the head coach, doesn't it?
Of course it does. I think Texas A&M's putting together a top 5 type team.
Well, we'll see that happen.
And with resources and everything else that's going on, and 100 and some thousand people in the stands every game, I don't think it's that much of a stretch that it's a top 5 program. Did I have it at 5 or was it 6? I don't know.
5.
Was it 5? Okay.
Yeah. In any case, I'm more of a like I got to see the results before I can give you, the grade kind of person. So that was my only kind of stick with that. But anyway, with regards to head coaches, I had to double take when I heard that both of you, and this was kind of shocking from you, because as you so articulately put it, that you like to do your research and you never like to just make the jump, just jump to a conclusion without thinking about it. But both of you were saying, without even debating it, that the Big Ten had a better roster of coaches than any other conference. And I was shocked to hear something like that. I don't even think there's any question.
Oh, you don't think there's any question? Well, if we go 14 deep?
I really don't, Mark. I mean,
there's really.
I can go through the first 7 of the SEC coaches, and they've basically won already.
Let me just make one comment before you start. There's nobody in the Big Ten that is not proven, and that includes Scott Frost, who both Corey and I had ranked as the worst in the Big Ten, that is not proven that they can win somewhere. And I mean win somewhere big. We'll include UCF being big, that they cannot win on a big stage and win double digits, there's really nobody in the Big Ten that hasn't won to some degree. There is no Clark Lee in the Big Ten. There is no, Brian Harsin, we'll put him on the Scott Frost tier of obviously doing the big things that he did at Boise State and winning consistently 75% of his games, 80% of his games. Who am I missing? Shane Beamer off to a nice start. I am a big Shane Beamer guy. I was very impressed by what they pulled off the first year, but it's 1 year. Eli Drinkwitz, nice tenure at Appalachian State. Hasn't really given us much past that. The SEC West is loaded. Granted, now with Brian Kelly in the conference and Sam Pittman, oh my goodness, who's not going to be impressed with what he's pulled off is first. So the West is loaded. Who's the worst coach in the SEC? Well, I guess it's Brian Harsin, who went like 69-19
Easily.
at Boise State. So if he's the worst,
Easily.
I got you. The West is loaded. Few questionable spots, not bad spots, but questionable in the East.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of stealing my thunder with all that.
I didn't pull the trigger on
I'm
that
just kind
comment. Corey made that statement, and then I said exactly what you reiterated, that I don't like to make a call unless I'm like, I got to get the schools out and the coaches and line it up, at least look at it before I make that statement. But I guess I was just enamored with running through the Big Ten rankings and being like, yeah, this is a good collection of coaches. I think especially it's not top heavy. It's not it. Yeah. As you reiterated, and I should say clarified very well in that comment. That's the reason I posted and highlighted it. There's no comparison between the Big Ten at the top and the SEC at the top. But I think the Big Ten is really strong from 3 to 9 or 10. Even Jeff Brom I had at 11 or I think at 11 comes off a nice 9-4 season.
So let me first say this. And I'll admit, of course, I'm an Alabama fan. Of course, I think about championships. I listed 3 championship coaches because that's the easy answer. First of all, I don't think anyone is going to debate that Saban and Kirby Smart are not at the top right now. I would be people can probably put Dabo Swinney in there, but we're talking about the Big Ten. This year, honestly, I might be walking that back. I might be more wanting to put Brian Kelly as the third coach, because I've said this for a long time. I think Brian Kelly is the top 5 coach in the country, and I think he had a hard ceiling at Notre Dame for a lot of reasons. I don't think he was ever going to win a national championship at Notre Dame. I don't think Dabo Swinney or Ryan Day or Kirby Smart would win a national championship at Notre Dame. I think the only 2 that would be Nick Saban and possibly Urban Meyer. And that's really just because those 2 can recruit and coach all sides of the ball better than anyone else. When I start reading names and I go from Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly, and then I'm looking at the guys like Jimbo Fisher, and now I have a Lane Kiffin on this list and Sam Pittman, as you just pointed out. Like you said, these are all in the West guys, so we both agree with that. The West, at least we have to agree, the West is absolutely the best coach division in college football.
Yeah,
Smart's obviously
it's
but if I jump over to the East, of course I got Smart. I got to throw in Mark Stoops in this argument. Discussion. I think Mark Stoops has been phenomenal at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
You can make now. I can't. Just like that last guy, not the Iowa guy, the one before me, he said he couldn't believe he mentioned Alabama because he wanted to get away from it. I can't believe I'm about to use Uncle Lou as a reference, but he made a comment that he thinks what Mark Stoops is doing at Kentucky and how long he's done it. He's kept them at an 9-win kind of team is more impressive than what James Franklin did at Vanderbilt. 9 games. Awesome, amazing at Vanderbilt. Did it for 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I never made that.
Throw that out there.
I never made that comparison, but I've been praising Mark Stoops for a long time. Yes, and I think that's a fair assessment because maybe we've in our minds elevated Kentucky to some pretty comfortable place in the top 25, but the Rich Brooks, Joker Phillips on down the line, Kentucky teams of recruiting at 70th in the country and just awful football teams year after year after year. Yes, he's completely lifted that program out of that.
And you know where I got to go with this next one. This is your boy right here. You have constantly been throwing this guy at us, Mr. Mike Leach.
Okay.
This is your guy, Mark. You loved him at Texas Tech. You loved what he did. Washington
State, yes.
And
I thought you were going to say Heupel for a second because I've been impressed with him. It's only been one season, but
no.
But yeah, Leach, yeah.
You understand? So even if I get out of the West and plus Kirby Smart, even if I get away from them, I still got. I think these names like Mark Stoops, Mike Leach, Sam Pittman's in the West.
You sold me.
Shane Beamer, perhaps all still put up.
I still want to put it side by side. I still want to put it side by side, but yeah, I think the Big Ten's deep. But yeah, when I like to praise the Mike Leach comparison, I like to just take people back and say, could you imagine Texas Tech finishing in the top 25 5 out of 6 years? Can you imagine? Like, nobody even thinks about Texas Tech now. They don't even come close to finishing.
Nope.
They just had a nice little season for them, 7-6, but that wasn't close to the top 25. And that's what Leach did there. And at Washington State went 11-2. And Mississippi State was good this past year. They were, they got beaten down by the SEC, but you throw them in the ACC Coastal or whatever, and they're probably playing in the conference championship game.
Hell, this past year they may have even won it.
Yeah, that's true.
But well, yeah, I mean, so yeah, I made my point there, and I would actually like to see that video. To be honest, I think that'd be a good one.
What video would that be? The SEC versus Big Ten coaches?
Yeah, just like you want to do is line them up side by side, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, on down the list.
Yeah,
I think that'd be good.
Okay.
Second one, and this goes way back, but I got to call into question your defense of Brett Bielema at Arkansas, specifically how you like to say that he had one bad season and he was out.
Yep.
That season being a 4-8 season.
Mm-hmm.
2017, I want to say it was. Yeah, so Brett Bielema started his career at Arkansas with a 3-9 season.
Yeah, and he took over
a
horrible team.
Arkansas's first no conference win season in over 50 years. That's bad.
That's where it started.
By any measure.
That's not where he finished, and that wasn't the narrative of his coaching tenure at Arkansas. That was the first season he was there.
No, his narrative was perennial 7-6, 8-4.
Yep.
That kind of.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that great either. So, I mean, it's not like he won 11 games, dropped to 4-8, and they fired him. That's actually what Butch Jones did. But, I mean, so I think you may be giving him a little more credit. He was not a great coach at Arkansas. I actually think the 4-8 firing was deserved. Now, in hindsight, it was a terrible decision because Arkansas became awful and unspeakably horrible over the next 3 or 4 years, but it led to Sam Pittman, so maybe it wasn't so bad.
Well, what's difficult about these coaches' rankings is I'm trying to make it a now ranking. I'm trying to make it all about now, but you can't shut off the past because that's the resume that leads us to now. But I tend to discard, or lessen the weight given to years and years ago because I'm looking at, again, 2022, not necessarily who would I hire. I've made that statement a few times, but to an extent, but it needs to be backed up. It needs to be confirmed and justified. I think Brett Bielema is a good guy. I only had him ranked 8th in the conference. It wasn't like I had
no. I wasn't disputing your ranking in the Big Ten. It's just the comment about how it seemed like you thought his firing at Arkansas was unjust.
He had a 4-8 season.
It was more than just one bad season, is what I'm saying.
No, he had one bad season. He ended on one bad season. Most coaches get another shot after that type of season.
I'm not sure why you don't include the 3-9 season as another bad season.
Well, that happened.
That would bring my count up to 2.
Well, sure, but if you go 3-9, if you take over a dumpster fire and you go 3-9, okay, that doesn't show us anything. It's not to that coach's credit, nor is it to their detriment at that point. For me, in the moment, I was thinking, well, Brett Bielema showed me something at Wisconsin. I know he's a capable coach. He did inherit a really good program, so it's not like he built Wisconsin, but he maintained it and maybe even elevated it somewhat. And then he comes to Arkansas. He takes over a dumpster fire. They go 3-9. So for me, that's a mulligan. That's like he's just getting his program started, and then he elevates it after that.
What dumpster fire is this? What dumpster fire are we talking about here, Mark? Because 2011, the season before he got there, Arkansas went 11-2.
Yeah, I know that. Well, I'm talking about in terms of off the field, Bobby Petrino going amok and so forth and so on. Yeah, I know what the records are. That Bobby Petrino can coach.
Dumpster fire may be a little misleading.
He took over a difficult.
He didn't take over a doormat.
Took over a difficult situation. Anyway, he gets it going, and they improve considerably. And he has like 3 pretty good seasons, and then he has 1 bad season. They get rid of him.
Right. Huh. Oh no, I guess they wanted the level of success they ironically had under Bobby Petrino, and they weren't getting close to that with Bielema.
They weren't, and we'll see what Sam Pittman can do. It's looking good, but to elevate from 9
it's looking good.
It's looking really good, but there's more work to be done, and we've seen other coaches do this, where they can take a bad program and make it good, but then to keep it going, especially in that conference, is a pretty big lift.
Especially in that division.
Yeah.
My God.
All right, Ben.
Well, that's all I got.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Make that video.
we may get to it. We'll see. Thanks, man. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Reasonable Gump sold me on the SEC. Not that he had to sell me on the SEC, which I claim to be the best conference in college football. I say that ad nauseum all the time, even when I'm challenged. But from the coaching standpoint, yeah, I was just, again, I like to dissect these things before I come out with some emphatic statement, because then, of course, if I just speak off the cuff and say something that I don't really mean because I haven't done the research, or really, it's not really research that's needed. I know what all these guys have done. I just need to look at the names and kind of add it up. Yeah, SEC's that got the best coaches. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight, sir?
Michael, I'm doing well. How are you?
Not bad. I caught your show kind of late, so I don't know where you got Coach Braum at in your top 14.
Got him last. No, I'm just kidding. I've got him at, I'm going to have to pull it up, I believe, at 10. Got him at 10. Let me find it. No, I got him at 11.
Okay.
There he is.
Is it because of the snake pit season of 2019, or is it because of 19 and 20?
Okay. Let me explain something first, Michael, so all these guys are really good at what they do. Almost all of them. If we go through the entire Power 5, especially, it's like I likened it to ranking employees that I've done in the past, and you could have 27 in a certain area, and 24 of them could be really good at their jobs to varying degrees, but somebody's ranked 24th. Maybe you got 3 dead weights, but then you got 24 out of 27 that are at least really good, if not exceptional at their jobs. Well, somebody's going to be ranked like 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and that looks bad, but that doesn't mean that they're not good at their jobs. So I think the only 2 coaches, there's only one coach who has severely underachieved in his role, and that's Scott Frost.
Scott Frost.
I
agree with you there.
There's one other coach that I still don't feel good about the hiring, the performance. He's starting to show some signs of life, but Mike Loxley has yet to prove to me that he's a good football coach. Everybody else I would consider to be a good head coach in the Big Ten, but they got to be ranked somewhere.
Okay.
Schiano's at a different place than obviously Brom, and I think it's just he took over such a bad program that I'm still giving him a little bit of credit for what he did at Rutgers the first time around. He took an awful program and made it a legit program, and then he takes over a laughing stock in the country, and he turns it into at least a competitive team that can play with teams.
And I can see that where you did that with Brett Bielema. I'm sure I'll go back and watch your show later. But I'm sure you got Brett Bielema probably in the top 6 because of what he did with Wisconsin.
8.
One of the things, some of us, you got him an 8?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means where you got, I hope you don't have Mel Tucker ranked ahead of him.
Okay, here we go. Frost 14, Loxley 13, Allen 12, Brom 11, Schiano 10, Ferentz 9, Bielema 8, Franklin 7, Crist 6, Fleck 5, Tucker 4, Fitzgerald 3, Harbaugh 2, Day 1.
Okay, I got to ask you, why do you have Mel Tucker ranked so high? Considering he's only been there 2 years and only had one decent season last year.
You are right. And I certainly stated that and said that I'm kind of breaking my own rule here because usually I need to have a coach prove it to me, not just show up in one big season and that's that. But he's giving us a lot of other indicators, meaning recruiting and transfer portal, that he's going to be able to sustain this to a certain degree. Yeah, I might be leaning a little high on Mel Tucker. Yeah, it's one season, but it was a heck of a season.
Yeah. Well, another thing, my last point I'm going to make is, do you think there's some coaches who try to win in the Big Ten, but the schools don't want to help the program be successful?
Well, I think every program and every administration wants to be successful. Are they willing to pay the price to be successful? That's the question. I don't know if Illinois, if their administration really cares that much beyond, okay, we're in the Big Ten, therefore we get a huge cut of money from TV and the Big Ten Network and A, B, and C, and this is a comfortable place to be that we can, hopefully get to a bowl game, and we can celebrate that. But besides that, I don't know that there's a lot of commitment at Illinois to go out and win championships. I think that they enjoy having a certain cachet of playing in the Big Ten and making a lot of money.
Yeah, I will say this though about Illinois. I've known the athletic director there in Illinois since he was back in high school because we went to the same high school. But I think he's trying to get it to where he wants them to be successful again, like they used to. But I just wonder if it's the administration part is kind of, and the board of trustees is probably kind of putting the kibosh on it though. Because Johnson's a great athletic director. And I wonder if it's just like that sometimes with the administration board of trustees, to where the athletic directors want to do this, but they're saying no.
Dabo Swinney has talked about this, that there are certain places, and of course they all have different levels of facilities and resources and all of that and recruiting footprints. But where to win at the level that they do at Clemson, it's got to be from the top down, and everybody's got to be on the same page, and everybody understand we are committed to winning national championships, and we will spare no expense to do everything we need to do. So if somebody needs an airplane to go flag down a recruit in LA, then that's what we're going to get. We will do anything that we need to do to win. Where I shouldn't even call out names because I don't know exactly. We only have an indication of how much commitment is placed in by these schools. So I hate to call out a particular school, but many of them give the appearance of, okay, as long as we're in conference blank, the ACC. And, we're competitive. We're not embarrassing, especially if we get to a bowl game. That looks good. We got to a bowl game, and therefore that keeps people fairly happy. We're 7-5, 8-4, so we can keep attendance at a certain level to where it's a good look that we've got 65,000 people in the stadium, and we get that bowl money. We get the conference bowl money. We get the TV contract, to where we're not in jeopardy of being a laughing stock in the league. We're good with that. And as long as we can maintain that, that's fine.
Yeah. All right. As always, thanks for taking my call. Have a great rest of your show, Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yep.
I got to say, I anticipated Michael just coming down on me hard for that Jeff Brom ranking at 11. I think between about, let's see, who was at number 4? Mel Tucker. Between 4 and 11, I don't think there's a whole lot of space there. All right, next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Porter Osborne.
Porter, what's up?
The SEC takeover continues. How about that?
The SEC takeover continues. All right.
Yeah, I see. Like this is the Big Ten.
All right.
It's the Big Ten discussion.
Well, it doesn't have to be. It could be any discussion you want it to be. But man, the SEC is taking over tonight. No, this has turned into a really good conversation because it's expanded past the Big Ten. People have brought in, hey, the SEC's got the great coaches, and that's kind of fueled the conversation. So it's been good.
Well, I enjoyed the callers. I thought not delusional. The Bama guy was real good. Reasonable. Bama, I thought he was good defensive. He was very defensive in a good way of our league. I think your list tonight is very good. I think Day is clearly number one. I think he's an excellent coach. He is consistently good, and really, this past Rose Bowl really showed me a lot. I think what it reminded me of. Do you remember the year? I think it was 2019 when Georgia. We had a bunch of. I bet we had through injuries and opt-outs. We had close to 20 players not make that Sugar Bowl against Baylor, and I think Ohio State had a similar number this past year going to Pasadena. And Georgia ended up beating Baylor and really looked inspired. And I was very impressed with Ohio State when they won that Rose Bowl. I don't know how it was perceived up there, but it really showed me a lot.
Yeah, for one thing, we know that Utah was on a roll. Once they got their quarterback situation figured out, they were a really good team. And lost their games early in the season and then went on a roll, smashed Oregon twice, of course, and they were motivated. That was their, there was a reason to speculate. Does Ohio State care to be in the Rose Bowl? They shoot for the playoff. They're still disappointed about the Michigan game. They're not reaching their goals. When you're at a place like at Ohio State, there's only about 4 places like this. You're supposed to be in the playoff. And if you're not in the playoff, you have to kind of wonder, are we going to be able to go out there and give the effort? Because everything's tunnel focused toward beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, go to the playoff. And they were down by 14 points on 3 different occasions in that game, and they came back and won it. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. People are questioning Ryan Day. Like, I've got a statement by SEC Dog on the screen right now talking, what has Ryan Day ever done? Blah, blah, blah. Well, let's understand he's only been the coach since 2019. So he took a team to a national championship game. So that would be like us 3 months ago saying, what has Kirby Smart done?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm the biggest Kirby Smart fan you'll find. And I guess my point about that Rose Bowl, it really showed me a lot about Day. I think it showed that the players like playing for him. And
And it's just a great way to finish the season. Plus the fact that he's won a playoff game, which puts him in elite company in the coaching profession. I think there's only 4 or 5 coaches that have won a playoff game. So to me, that elevates him in my eyes over someone like a Jimbo. To me, Jimbo, I mean, he won a national championship in 13. That's great and all, but I mean, that was the ACC. He's won a New Year's Six bowl at Texas A&M, finished, I think, 3rd in the country or whatever. That was impressive. But really, other than that, he really hasn't done a whole lot at A&M. So if I was starting a program, I would take Day over Jimbo any day of the week. But then again, I wouldn't, in terms of my alma mater, I wouldn't take anybody for Kirby Smart. But getting back to the Kirk Ferentz discussion, you guys kind of touched on something that kind of not really kind of sticks in my craw. I don't really get mad about it, but it just don't you think? And I'll throw this question out at you. I want your opinion, and I'm going to follow up with some comparisons. Don't you think there's a biases, or however you want to say it, against defensive-minded coaches?
A bias from fan bases, from media and fans analyzing those coaches and rating them?
I would say all the above, plus who is in demand. I'll give you an example. When Tennessee was looking for a coach, they were begging. Again, this is all speculation, but from what I heard, they were begging Mike Gundy to come to Knoxville. I think this was 2 coaches ago, back when they hired the defensive coordinator from Alabama back, I guess it was 17 maybe. Dan Mullen gets a blue blood job at Florida after what he did at Mississippi State. When you see 8-4 coaches that are quote unquote offensive minded coaches like Mike Gundy and Dan Mullen continually either get blue blood jobs or are recruited by blue blood programs, and then you see someone like Kirk Ferentz, who I would put his record, just the 1-loss record, not the show that's on the field, because I've heard you say before, football's not a show. You win or lose. There's no way an offensive-minded coach that had the same record as Kirk Ferentz. You're talking 11, 12-win seasons, Orange Bowls, I think even Big Ten championships. There's no way an offensive-minded coach that had a record like Kirk Ferentz wouldn't already have a top 5 job right now.
Well, at this stage in his career, I don't know if Kirk Ferentz is looking for that, but and I don't know what his aspirations were years ago. No, I get your point. I've scanned the country as you've run down your take, and just these recent hires in the SEC with Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, all offensive guys. People at USC are going crazy in anticipation of what's going to happen because Lincoln Riley's so amazing. Is he really?
I'll say something. How crazy is this, Mark? LSU beats Oklahoma 60-something to what? 14?
Yeah.
And 2 years later, LSU is trying to hire Lincoln Riley. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, in that part of the country, it is difficult to bulk up on defense to an SEC level, to a elite SEC level. So, I want to be fair to Lincoln Riley. So I've kind of cut it from both sides to say, yeah, he took over an excellent program. So much like Ryan Day, he inherited just about everything you would want. He did improve the recruiting somewhat, not to Georgia levels, but he upped the recruiting slightly from Bob Stoops. But the team His best team was the Bob Stoops team that he inherited in 2017. That was his best showing. That competed with Georgia at the Rose Bowl. Since then, it's gotten just progress. You know, that again, LSU was crazy good that year. And that looked, man, if people don't remember that playoff game, you know, LSU didn't beat anyone in the SEC that bad. Whoever they played that was the worst team that they played on their schedule in the SEC East, probably, you know, between Vandy, Missouri, and somebody else. They didn't beat anybody anywhere close to that. That game was like, I watched the first couple series of that game just a couple days ago. Just it was offered on YouTube, and I just thought, because I wanted to relive remembering sitting there, and we all anticipate these playoff games for so long and want to see good games. And I remember sitting there and only watching like 4 plays and was like, these are 2 entirely different teams. Like this is going to be an annihilation. And yeah, it was, you know, 49 points in the first half.
Well, not only that, he was down, I want to say 28-0 to Bama the year before.
Yes.
I think that's right, in the Orange Bowl. Now they came back a little bit in that game. I just don't understand. I think offensive-minded coaches get the benefit of the doubt because they kind of put on a show with some of the players. But
well, you know, just think about the reaction. Let's say, for example, we get on here after a game. If we witness a game where most of the people in this chat are just fans, but they don't have a rooting interest. You know, we just watched the Sugar Bowl and the final score was 51-48. Everybody's raving about what a great game it was. And too many people are complaining about defense. It's more about the offensive fireworks versus if we just watched a 10-7 game in the Sugar Bowl, there'd be all sorts of complaints. Boring. What's wrong with these offenses? They suck. Not that the defenses were great, but the offenses sucked. And it's just what entertains people. So I think that these administrations, if they want to default to one or the other, they're going for entertainment.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I will say this, and I'm surprised. I'm about to give you a stat. I always try to give you a stat, you know, when I call in. Not a lot of people have thrown this stat out there, but Nick Saban, and this is about coaches that decide to go finesse, that decide to put the ball in the air, you know, pass first type coaches. And Nick Saban wasn't that way when he was at LSU. He wasn't that way at Alabama. You know, Nick Saban was 5-0 in his first 5 national championship games. That's one at LSU and then 4 at Bama. He was 5-0. Do you know what his record is now in national championship games? Last 5?
Well,
you want to guess?
Well, I know the results. I would just have to add it up. They just lost in 21. They won in 20. They lost in 18, so that's 1-2. They won in 17. That's 2-2. They lost in 16, so that's 2-3.
Yep. Bingo. So you have a coach, and you know this genius coach, which he is. He's the greatest of all time.
Yep.
But you know, with Tua and everybody else, are like, oh, Bama's. You know, he's turned it up another notch for this program. I don't think he has, Mark. If he would have continued the way he started in Tuscaloosa, he'd have even more national championships because Bama would still be playing defense in Tuscaloosa. And I know Kirby was part of that. I think that had to hurt him, but it didn't. He still could have found a defensive coordinator if he would have recruited the right kids and not gone to this finesse offense. You know, the Bama defense isn't what it used to be. And they can't run the ball like they used to.
Well, yeah, you're hitting some good points there. I think the defensive analysis is, I agree with you to a certain extent. We also have to understand that evaluating a defense in 2022 is different than in 2010. aside from this Georgia freakish defense this year that gave up 6 points a game, everybody's given up something. And I expect this Alabama defense this year to be really good. And I thought they were really good last year. Once they got rolling down the stretch, they played really well against LSU, Auburn in the 2 playoff and championship games, and against Georgia in the SEC title game.
Yep.
But yeah, the running game, that is definitely the worst Alabama rushing attack we've seen under Saban. It's not even close this past season.
But they don't play they don't play defense like they used to, and there's no way. I mean, when you think about that defense from, say, when they played LSU, that 9-6 game, that was a suffocating defense. They don't play defense like that anymore. And for and I don't disagree. I have to disagree with you to say, well, other than Georgia, well, what is keeping other programs, other than recruiting, but what is keeping other programs from doing exactly what Georgia did last year? And making and placing an emphasis on running the ball and playing defense. Because Kirby showed last year, you could still win when you play suffocating defense and running the football. And he's proved it for, 6 years?
Yeah, Wisconsin and Iowa still do that as well. Not at that level, but at their level, they still win that way.
I just think when you go to a finesse offense, it affects everything about your program. And when it gets down to it, Mark, you're not as physical a program as you were back when you could run the football and stop the run. And everybody thinks that putting the ball in the air is the way to go. And I totally disagree. But anyway, it's a good debate for later, next time. But anyway, I just want to bring that up. I don't know if you've heard that stat about Saban, but he's 2-3 in national championship games last 5, when he was 5-0 to start his career.
Yeah. Well, I've never heard that stat, but it's in a sense a stat that's already in my head. So, I know the results of all the championship games, so all I had to do is run through them. But my last point, just to play devil's advocate, would be that the competition that they faced in the last 5 or 6 appearances versus the first few, that Notre Dame team in 2012, that 2011 LSU team was remarkable, but that offense was pretty bad. Not bad. I shouldn't call it bad, because they were loaded with talent, but they didn't have a quarterback. So
the Texas game would have been a better game if Colt McCoy.
Well, sure. We'll never know. We'll never know. They lost one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the country. Yeah. And these Alabama teams recently have run into Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson a couple times. But let me get to these other calls. I appreciate the call.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good night. All right. Why don't we take these 2 and call it a night? Here we go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP. Will you pardon me just a second? I want to make sure I honor these super chats. I've done a poor job at that tonight because many of them were on the screen. I put them all on the screen, but I failed to read a few because these conversations are going on. Christopher, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, you guys think Brian Kelly from Notre Dame to LSU will be easier for him? Heck no. LSU will have to out his contract in 4 years, so he's not predicting success for Brian Kelly at LSU. Then we've got Steve chiming in. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that so much. He says, remember when college football was a national sport? The SEC owns it now. How does the sport get back to that? In short, Steve, the only solution I have is a strong USC, and the ACC's in a part of the country where they're getting population growth. I just don't think that the schools by and large are committed outside of like 3 in the ACC. So it's up to Miami and Florida State to up the ante. So there's the answer to your question, and keep Ohio State / Michigan, Notre Dame strong to some degree. That can somewhat balance it out, but that's about it. All right, man, go to it.
Well, I would kind of just like to talk a little bit about the last caller because that was a great discussion you had. And he was talking about, for the end, the lack of defenses that are great. And I think the main reason is just because the rules of the game have changed so much to where it favors offense. You have to have a good offense in order to win in college football.
Sure, you have to have a good offense. You always had to have a good offense at least. But we've gotten so used to these teams throwing the ball all over the field is that we consider Georgia to have some kind of marginal run first. They always run offense. And because nobody gives Stetson Bennett that much credit. But if you look at their passing numbers, it's not like he didn't throw for 300 yards in these games and multiple touchdowns.
Right, but they're the exception, I feel like. And I feel like Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma offense is more of the rule. Like, I just think there's this perceived ceiling because of the rule changes of how far a great defense can take you. For example, especially when it comes to pass interference and how that call's been radically changed over the years. You got anything thoughts about that?
I think that you need both. You need both to some degree. You can't have a bad side of the football and win a national championship. You can't. Can you have an elite
70-30 offense?
Can you have an elite? It's 70-30 offense.
Yep.
Where
it was 70-30 defense 10 years ago.
Wow, it is flipped that much. Okay, I'm gonna be a little bit more measured. I was gonna say that it was more like 55-45 defense, and now it's 55-45 offense. And that's if you understand ratios, that's actually a big adjustment. But you're going 30-70, 70-30. Like the game's flipped that much in 10 years. And Georgia's the exception.
Yeah. Big time. I mean, even if you want to take it outside of just college football and look at the NFL as well, I think similar trends apply there as well.
Okay. We've had a lot of low-scoring Super Bowls recently. These teams have not necessarily been taking the top off the defense in the Super Bowl. And also,
30-9 for the Buccaneers-Chiefs game. 30 points is pretty big margin.
35-9. That's 44 points. That's 22 points per side. What was the score of this last game? It was like 23-20, right? What was the final score of the Super Bowl? And we had a 13-3 game. Anyway, I forget where I was going with this, but shoot. Oh, the Clemson team of 2018. Sure, they had Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, but they won that game because they shut down Alabama. They won because they had a great defensive front.
Yeah, was that the game where Alabama decided to go for a fake field goal against cover 2 defense on special teams? Or was that in 2016?
I don't remember that play.
Yeah, there was a play where Alabama decided to go for a fake field goal against fake cover 2 defense, which is one of the questionable calls in Nick Saban's tenure. Very few questionable calls, but that was one of them. But anyway, another thing the caller was talking about was Lincoln Riley and how he's got this high and mighty status. And I think one of the reasons he's got this larger than life status is because compared to the rest of the Pac-12, it's such a cataclysmic gap that it just naturally elevates them to this higher position than it just elevates them because of the gap.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
Yeah, Lincoln
So
Riley.
He would be the second best coach in the Pac-12.
I'm going to liken Lincoln Riley to Ryan Day, although he lost more than Ryan Day in that he inherited an excellent program. There are certain indications that he upgraded the program, but there are other indications that he downgraded the program and that it was slipping somewhat against not the best competition. The Big 12 is a good conference, but it's a solid conference. It's got, about half the conference is made up of really good teams, but not the type teams that Oklahoma should be concerned about in marching on to playoff appearances and trying to win national championships. And they were challenged by and starting to lose to some of those teams, Baylor, Oklahoma State, the last couple of years. And they lost 2 games the year before that too. So Lincoln Riley, I understand he's got a cachet. He's bringing players to USC. He's attracting players from both the transfer portal and in recruiting, but it's not so automatic.
Right. You still got to go out there and produce on the field. And I think also USC being horrible for so long also plays into it because now their fans have hope, which is something they haven't really had in a long time. Like legitimate hope of winning a title or making the playoffs and being relevant on the national stage.
And I certainly in no way discount Lincoln Riley as not being a huge upgrade over Clay Helton. Absolutely, he is. Who is the second best? Well, I don't even think Lincoln Riley's he may prove to be the best coach in the Pac-12, but as we sit here right now, I would still rate, and I did, Kyle Whittingham as a better coach than Lincoln Riley. But he just is not going to have the same type personnel.
Right. I can get that. I can see that. My thinking behind it was just because of the depth of the coaches in the Pac-12 is nowhere near as good as any other league. Just in general, that could explain the hype behind Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, the Pac-12, the level of coaches in the Pac-12 has been downgraded considerably in recent years. Minus Mike Leach, minus Chris Peterson.
It's bad. Well, let me talk about your rankings, Mark. Okay?
Yeah. Yep.
What coach do you think is going to take the biggest increase next year in your ranking?
What do I got? I like I got to remember who's 6, 7. I think that Jeff Brom at 11 is going to continue to field pretty good football teams and win probably 8 games this year.
Okay. And what coach do you think will take the biggest decrease?
I think, Mel Tucker's going to level off a little bit. I just, what he did last year, I don't think he's going to maintain that. His typical year at Michigan State's not going to be 11-2 and finishing in the top 10 in the country.
Okay. And my question that nobody's brought up, so I'm probably in the fringe minority here, is why is Jim Harbaugh too?
So if we were ranking coaches strictly on last season, where would you rank him?
Well, if it's strictly on last season,
Yep.
it would probably be two, but I can't.
No, if we knew nothing about these coaches,
the
if these coaches came out of nowhere, you had no idea who they were, and they just showed up and started coaching all these teams, and we watched last season play out exactly the same, where would you rank Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, one or two.
Why not one for sure?
Well, Ohio State had a really good year. I know they lost against Michigan head-to-head, but their lasting impression was a whole lot better than Michigan.
Sure. But you're telling me if we knew nothing about these guys, nothing, and the Big Ten season played out exactly the way it did last year, you would not rate Jim Harbaugh as the best coach in the Big Ten?
I probably would put him at one, but
we would have to put him at one. If we knew,
he would be one. But I don't think it's this cataclysmic gap. I don't think it's huge.
Okay.
I think it's pretty close between him and Ryan Day.
Okay.
I was going to get at.
And I'm attempting to rank these coaches in the moment now, but of course we've got to take the past into consideration. And Jim Harbaugh's past has been that on the downside, he has failed considerably and consistently against Ohio State, and that's been his barrier to get to a Big Ten championship game. And he's lost a lot of other top 10 type games, Penn State, Iowa, etc. in the past. His top 10 record is not good. Bowl record's not good. Okay. He's won the Big Ten championship, got to a playoff, beat the team that's the best team and most talented in the conference this last year. And he has resurrected 3 programs. You know, he's done something Ryan Day's not proven he can do, and that's take a bad program and make it a good program. And Harbaugh's done this 3 places.
I understand that, but we're not. I mean, that was a very long time ago, his Stanford day and those type of days. I mean, he gets credit for that, but I don't know.
And I'm trying to balance. I'm trying to balance that out. Where it still happened, he still did it. If I'm going to take it to the extreme of just in the moment, right now, then Jim Harbaugh is number 1. That's the point I was trying to prove, that you have to take some consideration of what's happened in the past. And where do you stop that? You can't end it and say, okay, only the last 3 years or only the last 5 years or only, we can play that game, and who makes up the rules.
No, I was just going to do his Michigan tenure. That's all I was going to do.
Okay.
Since they got there.
Okay.
At their current stop.
Okay.
I think that'd be a fair way to do it.
Okay. If we just do that, then Jim Harbaugh inherited a 5-win team, and Ryan Day inherited one of the 3 best programs in the country.
Yeah. But for Michigan, outside of one great year, they've been disappointing compared to their expectations.
I would not consider 2015 to be disappointing, or 2016. And basically the finish of 2018 was disappointing. But yeah, so who are you ranking ahead of Jim Harbaugh?
I would have Pat Fitzgerald ahead of Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
For what he's done at Northwestern. And not Mel Tucker.
What has he done at Northwestern?
Well, he's won 2 Big 10 West titles, and I think that's very impressive for somebody who is at Northwestern.
Okay, I've got him at number 3. I had him at number 1 last year.
Well, I mean, that was last year. You had him at number 1.
Had him at number 1.
I'm talking about this year. This year he's 3, and he needs to be 2.
Okay. All right.
That's all I'm saying. Just flip them around.
Yeah, we're
Flip
doing no flipping at this point. It's cemented.
Oh man, cemented in the record book.
It's written in stone. It's in the record books. Yes.
Well, something else that was written in stone was the Big 12 commissioner stepping away from the game.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to change the Big 12? Because, I mean, they're already having a lot of changes. And I don't think it's good to lose leadership when so much is going to change for your conference.
This might be an unfair knock on Bob Bowlesby, but the Oklahoma-Texas negotiations with the SEC, we found out after that agreement was reached, had been going on for 6 or 7 months. And I would think that if you're a conference commissioner in one of the 5 major conferences in America and have been there for 10 years, you're not just taking over. You've established yourself after 10 years of being a conference commissioner that part of the job is building up enough connections and relationships that somebody would have picked up a phone at some point or texted you to say, do you know what's going on right now? So for him to be completely in the dark and blindsided by that, again, I don't want to be too harsh on him, but and also during the COVID football decisions, he seemed to just kind of go along with, he was just waiting for the SEC and the ACC to make their move. And then he kind of jumped on, and he was only confident to say, we're going to play football once they said, we're going to play football.
Right. And the final thing I'll do, Mark, or say, is I'm going to declare a must-win game right now. Okay, Mark?
Okay.
In April. Must-win game. Tennessee must beat Florida this year. And the reason for that is they have been horrible over the last 10 or so years against Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, their 3 main rivals.
Mm-hmm.
Florida's never been as low as they have this year. I'm pretty sure the game's at home for Tennessee. And if they don't win this game, where they might be favored, I just don't see them beating any of those 3 for a very long time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Florida, obviously, I'm blanking on that game last year. Florida won the game, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm not blanking on it. I do remember watching some of that game. They're like 1-12 against Florida the last 13 years. Something like that.
Yeah, and that's not acceptable for where Tennessee wants to be at or should be at.
No. Not at all. All right, man. Well, thanks for the call.
Yeah, no problem. Hit the like button, guys. Let's get over 100 likes.
Let's do that. All right, to Real MVP. Thank you.
No problem.
I want to remind everyone that we've got spring football going on Saturday, like all day. Crazy day of spring football, and we're going to be here practically the entire day. So I'm going to release a lineup so you know where I'm at from about noon on. Purdue and Boston College play early. Then later we got Kentucky, NC State, Texas A&M, Auburn. We want to do a watch party for Clemson at 1, and later for Florida State, and do a Nebraska post game as well. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, Voice of College Football, the savior of the offseason. How you doing, Mark? It's Tim from California.
Hey, Tim. What's going on?
Hey, I'm just calling. First, the real, I love you, man. Your passion for the sport is amazing, but your hatred for the Pac-12, dude, every time you call, you crap on the Pac-12.
Me? Hate the Pac-12?
No. The real MVP.
Oh, yeah.
That dude can't call you without cracking on the I don't know why. I mean, anyway. But, we should ask what do you think, Mark? In the past 10 years, who's had the best season between USC and Kentucky? I'll throw USC. I'll say we'll go with 2016 and 2017. At the end of 2016, there's probably maybe 1 or 2 teams that could have beat USC in 2016. But I don't know. The Real keeps talking about the fact that USC, and a lot of fans say this, that we have been in the toilet the last 3 years in our health and health. But I mean, you don't have to go back too far when we're like, top 15,
sure,
top 10. We had some seasons. As a matter of fact, even in the 2017, was it Cotton Bowl against Ohio State?
Yeah.
We shut Ohio State out in the second half. You guys won that game. We had no offense. We had no answer for your defensive line whatsoever. Darnold's getting destroyed. But I mean, we had a fairly decent defense in that second half, shutting out Ohio State. So I mean, to say that USC, it's kind of weird. Yeah, USC was down by USC, Ohio State standards, by top standards. But I mean, you're playing a great conference, the Real. But don't start tracking. You're Kentucky's your team, man. Well, let's keep it real.
So he said that anyway, Kentucky's been better than USC in the last 10 years?
No, he's an SEC fan that thumps the SEC. Like, you never see Pac-12, and we do suck. But even when we were good, I don't ever remember a time, at USC, you want to beat everybody. It's not that we don't, this whole thing about you have to be your SEC, you hear a lot of that from the whole conference. I don't really hear the Big 12 doing that. I don't hear the Big 10 doing that. I don't hear the ACC doing that. It's usually there's like 3 teams that are really good in the SEC, and then the other 9 jump on. The other 9 dwarves. They used to call USC, the Pac-12, they called it USC and the 11 dwarves. I mean, it's just kind of inconsistent for these a conference like the SEC. Everyone just jumps on. We've got 3 great teams. It's usually Alabama, then a couple other teams. UF pops up, UGA pops up. But the idea that I mean, when you hear it from, again, no offense, but a Kentucky fan pumping his chest because of the SEC and then cracking on my school, I'm just like, dude, what has your team done ever, really? Like ever.
Kentucky football, in terms of winning big, nothing.
Yeah.
But they are enjoying their longest stretch of success right now.
And what is the high point of their greatest success?
Going way back, they won a national championship like in I forget the year, in the 50s, and then I could argue for them winning one in 77, but then they were deplorable for 40 years for the most part. They had a couple little 8-4 seasons, and then here in the last 5 years, they're a top 25 team / program right now.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, nothing close to USC. Yeah, it's
no, I know. I just had to unload because, dude, again, I like the dude's passion, but it's just every time he calls, he's got to make a comment about the Pac-12 and USC. And then it's just like if he was a LSU fan, even like John throws some smack. I can't talk smack. They had like one of the best offenses I've ever seen in my life and one of the greatest teams ever. So when John talks smack, I gotta kind of be quiet. When I hear a Bulldog fan talking smack, I gotta keep my mouth shut. I hear Bama fan talking, I gotta be quiet. But when I hear Kentucky Wildcat fan talking not basketball but football, it's just kind of weird to me. And he goes, "Yeah, dude, but you know what? We're in the best conference." Good for you, dude. Good for you being in the best conference. Anyway, all right. So forget all that. I went way too long on that. And the Real, I know I still love you. I think you're awesome, but dude, what is your obsession, man? All right. So Mark, getting back to the Lincoln Riley roast that I've heard tonight. I've been sitting back here listening to the Lincoln Riley roast a little bit and kind of going, really? Because
are you talking about from me or from other people?
Well, you had one comment, mostly from the chat and some other people. But you made the comment that you saw, and OU did get dismantled. I mean, that game was over at halftime. Played them even for the rest of the game, but they probably called the dogs off. But I mean, they lost by what, 35 or 34? Where they lost by? I can't remember. It was a lot.
Yeah, 63-28. What's that? 35. Yeah, it didn't even matter what the final score was. Sure.
Yeah, they called the dogs off. It was bad. But then you said that was the SEC teams. No one got beat that bad, and so I had to look. I don't know if off the top of my head, but Arkansas lost by 36. A&M lost by, that can't be right. Was it 40? Did they lose by 43? Maybe I did my math wrong. Ole Miss lost by 21. Mississippi State lost by 23. Vandy by 28. Georgia lost by 27. Clemson, the playoff in the championship game, lost by 17. The only teams that played them close were Florida
Auburn.
and Alabama in the SEC. Auburn, yeah, sorry, Auburn too.
And Texas.
That was a low scoring game.
Auburn held them within 23-20. They had to score late to beat Texas. That was a close game, 45-38. The Alabama game was a nail biter. My point was I wasn't making an all-encompassing. I knew for sure that LSU didn't beat anyone in the SEC by 35 points. I tend to look beyond just the score. The score is somewhere to start. But if you watched LSU and Oklahoma, it was inconsequential that score ended up a 5-touchdown game. As I noted, I watched like 5 plays and knew that these two teams did not belong in the same field. Like LSU had 49 points at halftime. And so
no doubt. They were completely outclassed. I know exactly what you're talking about. And the game was over. I can see that completely.
So to justify Oklahoma's performance because they only lost by 35 versus Vandy losing by 36 or whatever, it was a horrendous performance when LSU wasn't able to beat the worst teams or make the worst teams in the SEC look that bad. That was my point.
Well, again, I think that LSU team would have made a lot of really good teams look really bad. And they did make a lot of teams look really bad.
They also played a lot of teams close that weren't great teams. Auburn wasn't a great team. Texas wasn't a great team.
Well, those were early, though. You know what I mean? You don't know. A lot of things happened. Was Joe Burrow, this is Joe Burrow's first year, right, with the team?
Second.
So, I mean, sometimes it takes some time a little to gel. And then also just like boxing, in football, you don't have to have a great team. If your team does something really well, that the other team maybe might be a weakness, you can play some teams pretty close. So, yeah, I mean, again, that game was a shellacking, but it's not like the LSU, like OU was the only team that I mean, that LSU team.
But the point is,
with Burrow,
I know that they weren't the only team, but OU was a Big 12 champion playing in a playoff. They weren't the 7th best team in the SEC. They weren't.
Big 12 in 2019 wasn't exactly world killers.
Well,
that isn't exactly the top.
That's my point.
Yeah, that's my point too. And you know what? USC is in Oklahoma, and so I really do think. I mean, for instance, I'm not going to define Ryan Day by a 28-point loss to Alabama, right? That doesn't define him as a coach.
No, it doesn't. It shouldn't. We also have to understand that was a national championship game after they just put a shellacking on Clemson, and Clemson has been one of the 2 or 3 best programs in college football for years. Oklahoma didn't get to a national championship game and then get stomped. They get stomped there. And that was a year after they got stomped. And they've gotten stomped a few times. The Rose Bowl performance was really good against Georgia, but they lost. So what's the point here? Oh, we're defending Lincoln Riley. Okay. Got it. And Lincoln Riley, I stated he's a really good coach and so forth and so on. I just want to see him. He's going to have to build a program at USC. He was handed a program like Ryan Day. He was handed a program at Oklahoma.
Well, that's questionable too. I want to take that one up.
He wasn't handed a great program?
No, Mark, that's not what I said. Let's look at the 2 programs between Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley.
Okay.
Would you say that the Oklahoma Stoops era was on par with the Meyer run at OSU?
No, not quite.
Even the same ballpark?
Oh, they're in the same ballpark.
I wouldn't put them in the same ballpark.
Bob Stoops won the Big 12 championship almost every year he was there. Even when Texas was
Oregon
really
won
good.
A lot of the Pac-12. So those teams that Meyer put together, especially the 2 recruiting classes right before he was forced out that Ryan Day inherited, those were like top 2 recruiting classes, top 3 recruiting classes. I don't remember. They were way up there.
Absolutely.
You know, and so the talent level that Ryan Day had coming in compared to the talent level that Lincoln Riley inherited. You remember all the quarterbacks that Riley got, they were all transfers. You know, it wasn't like Stoops was getting these guys. It was transfers coming in to play in Lincoln Riley's system. And to say that they're equitable, I just think that might be stretching it, because I don't think that the 2 programs were, in my opinion, the same ballpark. I mean, Meyer was doing like 1 game a year. You know, he dropped 1 game a year to keep him out of the championship game. The NFL guys, the defensive NFL guys on the line, the front 7, and the skill players and the quarterbacks that they had at OSU, the talent, the defenses especially, the talent on defense at OSU compared to OU. Do you think they're even close to being equitable?
I don't think they're equitable. But we also have to consider how good those programs were versus the rest of the conference. And Ryan Day inherited a team that was, in your words, you know, decidedly better, more talented, especially on the defensive side, but they had to go up against a conference that was better. So what was Lincoln Riley doing during those 4 years at Oklahoma to upgrade it to churn out better performances against the elite than what he was inheriting? He upgraded the recruiting somewhat, but it was not Urban Meyer level.
No, and definitely not on the defense. Again, a lot of people say he was running from the SEC, this and that. You know, that's a really good point. Here's the thing. If I'm a coach, and it's been well documented about having the recruiting, like your bed, like your home field, you know what I mean? Like Ohio State, Midwest, some pretty good talent right there that they can draw from. Their recruiting base is pretty solid. If you look at LSU, pretty solid. You look at California, very solid. Florida. When I think of recruits, I don't think of Oklahoma very often. You know, matter of fact, you could probably count the 5 stars of Oklahoma over the past 5 years on one hand. And so you're competing in there. You're competing with, again, you're Oklahoma State, and you're competing with Texas for those Oklahoma recruits. Lincoln Riley coming to California is going to pick the best of California and then go into Florida and go into Ohio and go into Pennsylvania and go into Texas. And then he can build a defense that can compete with an LSU, who can compete with the SEC teams. He couldn't do that at Oklahoma. It's clear he couldn't. And then Bob Stoops had lost. I think it was a season he had 5 losses a couple of years before Riley got the helm, and then a 3-loss season. You know, we're talking about Riley. Yeah, he's lost 2 games a season for the what? And you're saying Day's young. He's true, but you know Lincoln Riley. What? He's been a coach 5 years. I mean, he's just a pup himself. He's just going to get better. So I don't know. I was just listening to it. Like it's literally sounded like on the show tonight. That, yeah, well, you know, he's got a lot to prove, but, you know, Ryan Day's got it rolling. He's the best in the Big 12. I think that was a bit too much for me to kind of kick back and listen to. We'll see. Maybe Riley falls on his face, but this whole soft this, soft that thing, it got worse because think about it. Who were his quarterbacks those years we're talking about? The last 2 years, he's had freshman quarterbacks starting. When was the last time Day had Stroud was a sophomore, right? Redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
You know, you had in 2020 you had a freshman, true freshman. In 2021 you had a true freshman take over for a guy that was possibly overrated. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. There's some reason why everybody wanted this guy. Name how many schools in the country, maybe 5 or 6 would say no to Lincoln Riley as being their coach.
I'm not saying he's not a good coach.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we haven't seen him had to build a program. And that's not his fault. And now he's going to build a program, not going to Kansas State and trying to build a program, but going to USC. So he's going to have a ton of advantages, and especially in that conference, but he at least has to build it from 4-8 to championship level and what's expected of him, which is win the Pac-12 most of the time and get to the playoff.
Right. Well, again, at Oklahoma, he lost to, he's losing. He did lose all of his playoff games, but like I said, I think someone earlier said, how many coaches out there have playoff wins? I would just really, again, I don't know. And then as far as the timing of him coming, and the whole Brian Kelly, that's been going around in circles. Well, I'm gonna leave that one up for a different time. But then, so you had Lincoln Riley as the number 2 in the Pac-12, and I love Whittingham. That dude is awesome. Talk about tough. That dude, his defenses overperform all the time. They got a pretty good built-in advantage playing at the Muss, playing up there at altitude and in the cold. And a lot of the Southern California schools and desert schools, and they go up there and they go into that cold, inclement weather, and it's at altitude, so it's really thin. That is one hell of a home field advantage, and their fans are about as good as they get. They're up there with the Washington, Oregon fans for volume and being on the other team and supporting their team and selling out their smaller stadium but loud stadium. But he's only won one. I mean, in a very weak conference, he's only won one. If I'm correct, one Pac-12 championship. He's been there for over a decade. I think his overall record is like 760 or something like that. And so
his overall record is what?
You're downgrading because sorry, 670. Did I say 760? 670. My bad.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, no. He's 670 as a coach.
Well, they just joined the Pac-12 in what, 2012?
Did he win? Yeah, they came in 2012, so about a decade. And they've got one Pac-12 championship.
Okay. He's won the division championship 4 times, and he lost the other championship games. Okay.
Well, there's a running joke. One year at USC, in the Helton death haze, they literally had a T-shirt they're selling saying Pac-12 South champs, and every USC fan I know literally threw up in their mouths. Being the Pac-12 South champion is especially these days, is nothing to hang your hat on.
No, if I ran a football program or a school, we would not hang any division championship banners. I think that's a joke, but I'm just noting that he got to the Pac-12 championship games. Yeah, I understand, but I'm just stating that, I would not be celebrating division championships in college football because you've got to close out the deal and win the conference.
Right. And I mean, that's why I say when you quoted the 4 that he's won the Pac-12 South, I'm just like, and so anyway, and you have Lincoln Riley. And again, I know you're downplaying. Well, he took over this. First off, it was not a powerhouse that Bob Stoops. It was, again, back then, if you talk about the Big 12 has come on pretty strong. They got some pretty good teams now. But if we talk about the Big 12 4 or 5 years ago, the national media was just burying the Big 12. Before they buried the Pac-12, they were burying the Big 12 about the quality of football in the Big 12. It was pretty much just Oklahoma. And then some other teams would pop up pretty good, but it wasn't like anything close to the SEC or the Big 10. So Bob Stoops beating up a bunch of lesser opponents and losing all the big important games. Losing 5, I don't know what years because I don't really follow OU that much, but I know glancing at his record, he lost 5. A couple of years before Riley took over, they lost 5 games in a season.
Yeah,
I don't know what year it is.
2014.
Someone could clue me in.
All right, we're gonna keep going here. I appreciate the call.
All right then.
Call back anytime. Appreciate it. Yeah. When we've been on for 3.5 hours and I got a 20-minute phone call, I think all of you can tell when I'm not fighting back and I'm just like, I'm done talking. That's pretty much what that comes down to when there's a 20-minute phone call after 3.5 hours. Yeah. So and when we're repeating information over and over and over. So I want to get to these two super chats here. We got Christopher. Thank you so much for that. You're probably not even watching anymore, but thank you. After Notre Dame wins September 3rd, I see after whatever that is. Oh, after Swarbrick, the AD, retires, the new AD will get us in the Big Ten ACC, considering our new Tennessee State 2023 when we go from after that we can win a conference, so we won't have to go undefeated. Okay, Christopher, thank you so much for the super chat. Whatever all that means, you've got Swarbrick retiring, then you think they're going to join a conference. I don't know what all that means in the middle about Tennessee State 2023. Yes, you can win a conference. You don't have to go undefeated. Okay. Let's understand Notre Dame was selected to go to the playoff with a loss and a non-conference championship in the ACC. My trackpad's screwing up. And finally, trackpad's like 6 months old. I don't know why it's giving me all sorts of issues. Falcon Rex, appreciate it. SEC is the best turf of any conference. We'll have to look that over, Falcon Rex, in regards to turf. Falcon Rex has become the unofficial Voice of College Football turf expert. I would love to have that title, but I got to give it up to Falcon Rex. That is the only reason they are a good conference. All right. Let's see if I can take this off of life support and see if it'll still work for me so I can check out the rest of the comments. Anything else in here that we need to hit? Oh, man. Yes, we do. Christopher, coming back. Appreciate you. Just saying, as of today, for 2023 recruiting ranking, Notre Dame is 1. Yes, as of today, in April. This has to hold to December. Georgia's 4, Alabama's 30. Just wait until April 29th this year, and we will skyrocket with talent. Football will be exciting for all of us as diehards. Christopher, yes. Now, if Alabama finishes at 30, we will have all sorts of videos and analysis to discuss Nick Saban's fall from grace, 30th ranking in the country. Anything else? I don't believe so. I think we've hit the end of the line. Appreciate all the comments coming in. And again, we are going to go nuts on Saturday. So be here and also hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, and check out our post on the community page. I post our live schedule every day because it's not just here. Understand we got 25 team channels. So I'm going to pop up on Clemson, Florida State, Nebraska on Saturday as well. And we also have a live show coming up on the Miami channel Friday at 6. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We will catch you on the Miami channel Friday, 6 Eastern. See you then.